Welcome back to the Buddhism Seeds channel, where Zen stories are not just tales, but doors that lead the mind into a realm of stillness. In the busy rhythm of life, when the body grows weary and the mind is burdened with endless thoughts, everyone longs for deep, restful sleep. But to reach such sleep, it takes more than a soft pillow or a quiet room. What matters most is the peace within. At such times, Zen stories become a lamp, illuminating the path that guides the mind back to its original serenity. Each word, each image in Zen teachings is like a gentle breeze brushing against the heart, washing away worries and dissolving attachments. As you listen, you will feel your mind grow lighter, no longer burdened by today's unfinished matters or tomorrow's worries. Like clear water, a Zen story cools the heart, carrying you away from life's noise into stillness, where deep sleep arrives naturally like a gift. And now, to begin this journey, let us enter an ancient Zen story called The Beggar and the Precious Jewel. This is not just a story, but a mirror reflecting the search for true value within every human being. Long ago, in a small village on the banks of the Ganges River, there lived a beggar named Sahila. He was thin, his clothes in tatters, his eyes vacant as though faith in life had left him. Each day, Sahila dragged his bare feet along dusty roads, stretching out his hand for scraps of food from passers-by. Yet most people looked at him with cold eyes, some even driving him away like a mangy dog. Sahila often asked himself, "Why was I born into this life? Why does life give me nothing but suffering, while others enjoy happiness and wealth?" No one answered. Only the dry wind whistled through his dusty hair, while hunger tore at his stomach each night. One evening, as the sun set behind distant mountains, Sahila curled up under a Bodhi tree by the roadside. He watched the village children playing, then looked at his trembling thin hands as his eyes blurred with tears. At that moment, a traveler appeared, a man in a coarse cloak, plain in appearance, yet with eyes that shone as if they held the sky. People called him Yamita, a wandering pilgrim carrying with him a strange serenity in each step. Yamita stopped before Sahila bent slightly and asked, "My friend, why do you look so hopeless?" Sahila raised his head, his voice hoarse. "Don't you see? I am nothing but a wretch. In all my life, I've never known a day of fullness. God, or whatever deity there is, must have forgotten me." Yamita sat beside him, his eyes gentle yet firm. No one has forgotten you. It is you who have forgotten yourself." Sahila laughed bitterly. "Me? What do I have to remember? What do I have besides this chipped bowl and this ragged body?" Yamita was silent for a moment, then pulled from his sleeve an old cloth pouch. He placed it in Sahila's lap. In life, we often search for treasure everywhere, forgetting that the treasure is already within ourselves. Within you, there has always been a jewel. Sahila looked at the pouch, then burst into a bitter laugh. "Are you mocking me? What treasure could a beggar have? A jewel, if I had one. I wouldn't be living like this." Yamita remained calm. "You may not believe it, but remember, poverty is not your true nature. It is only dust that is settled temporarily. The jewel cannot be lost, only forgotten." With that, he stood and walked away, his steps light as the wind. Sahila sat frozen. He opened the pouch. Inside was a shining jewel. For a moment, his eyes lit up. He didn't know where it had come from, but it was real dazzling. His hands trembled as he clutched it tightly, fearful of losing it, hardly able to believe it was his. That night, Sahila could not sleep. He held the jewel against his chest, his heart swelling with both hope and fear. He whispered to himself, "Is this really mine? Why would someone as worthless as me have such a thing?" In the days that followed, Sahila was both joyful and afraid. He hid the jewel carefully, telling no one. But the more tightly he held it, the more anxious he became. Whenever strangers came near, he would shrink back, his heart pounding. He did not dare use the jewel for food or shelter, fearing it would be lost. He thought, if I use it, it will disappear. I must guard it at all costs. And so even with the jewel, Sahila lived like a beggar still. The only difference was that in his heart, there was now a constant fear of losing what he had never truly dared to use. One day, Yamita appeared again. He saw Sahila looking more haggard and anxious than before. Yamita sat down and asked, "Have you found the jewel?" Sahila clutched at his chest, his eyes frantic. "Yes, I have it, but I live in fear every day. I'm afraid someone will steal it. I'm afraid one morning it will be gone from my hands." Yamita smiled. "Then how is that any different from before? You are still a beggar, only now a beggar in spirit. You cling to a treasure, yet never use it. You live in fear instead of peace." Sahila sat silent, stunned. Yamita's words pierced his mind like an arrow. He understood, but did not know how to let go. As time passed, the jewel remained in the pouch, its light dimmed by dust. Sahila still wandered the familiar roads, begging for scraps, but in his heart, a faint flame began to stir. Perhaps life is not only this. Perhaps I need to understand Yamita's words more deeply. The next day, Sahila wandered through the village again. On his shoulder was the same old bundle, hiding the jewel Yamita had given him. He walked cautiously, watching everyone around him. Whoever passed by, a child or an old man, he felt as if they were peering into his secret. He muttered, "No one must know. No one must see. If I lose it, I'll have nothing left." But the more he tried to hide it, the more it consumed him. His mind had no room for peace. One day he sat at the marketplace begging for a bowl of rice. The woman selling food waved him away. "Go away. I have nothing to spare for a useless man like you." He lowered his head and walked off, his heart full of shame. He wanted to pull out the jewel and give it to her in exchange for a meal. But his hands trembled, then froze. He was afraid that once revealed it would be taken. Sahila sat on a step, clutching his chest, his eyes hollow. A child passing by tossed him a banana peel and laughed. "A beggar deserves nothing but trash." The harsh laughter cut into his heart like a knife. For a moment he clenched his fists, wanting to shout, "You know nothing. I have a jewel more precious than anything you own." But fear choked his throat. He lowered his head and endured the scorn. That evening, Sahila returned to the Bodhi tree. He pulled out the jewel and gazed at its glittering light under the moon. Tears streamed down his weary face. "Jewel, you are so beautiful, but you only bring me more suffering. I cannot beg forever, yet I cannot use you either. What am I to do?" In his despair, he heard footsteps. Yamita appeared again, his presence light as a cloud. He sat down smiling. "You still don't understand, Sahila." Tears fell from Sahila's eyes. "I have the jewel, but my life is no better. I only worry more, fear more. Before I was poor and hungry. Now I am still poor and hungry, only with the added burden of fear. What good is this jewel to me?" Yamita looked deep into his eyes. "You are mistaken. The jewel is not for trading for gold or food. It is a symbol. It reminds you that within you, there has always been value, There has always been light. Yet you still choose to live as a beggar. The problem is not the jewel. It is your own mind. Sahila trembled. I don't understand. If I have value, why does the whole village despise me? Why do I still live like this? Yamita sighed. Because you have never looked into yourself. You only look outward. You believed the words of others who told you you were worthless, and you embraced that suffering as your fate. This jewel is only my way of reminding you that inside you lies an inexhaustible treasure, a treasure no one can steal. Sahila lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. For the first time in many years, he felt as though a beam of light had pierced his soul. In the days that followed, Sahila began paying more attention to Yamita's words. When he begged, he no longer looked at people only with shame, but with curiosity. He noticed the wealthy still anxious, the beautiful still quarreling, the powerful still restless. He asked himself, am I not the same as them, only poorer outwardly? But if they too are anxious, then what difference is there? One morning as he sat by the river, Sahila overheard two men arguing. One said, I've worked all my life, yet I still fear losing my wealth. I've never slept peacefully. The other replied, I am the same. I am rich, but my heart is never at ease. Sahila quietly gave a bitter smile. So it isn't just me living in fear. Realizing this, he began to think differently. Perhaps Yamita was right. The problem wasn't poverty or wealth, but the mind. That afternoon, he went to find Yamita and knelt down. Please teach me. I don't want to just cling to a jewel. I want to understand it. I want to know how to live without fear. Yamita placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice warm and deep. That path is not a matter of a day or a month. It is a journey. But you need only begin by facing the truth you are not poor. You have simply forgotten the treasure within. Live as if you are already abundant. Share instead of fearing loss. Let go instead of clinging. Sahila was taken aback. Let go. If I let go, I'll have nothing. Yamita smiled. It's precisely when you let go that you'll see you never truly lost anything. You only lose fear, lose chains, lose burdens. Only then are you truly free. Sahila felt silent waves rising in his heart. Yamita's words touched not just his ears, but the depths of his heart. From that day, he began to try changing. When someone gave him a piece of bread instead of clutching it, he shared half with another wandering child. Strangely, when he did so, he didn't feel lacking. He felt lighter. When people insulted him, he no longer grew angry as before. He only smiled. One night, he sat by the river watching the moon shining on the water. He took out the jewel and placed it on his palm. The wind blew, the light shimmered. For the first time, he whispered, "Perhaps your true value isn't in my holding you tight, but in my realizing I was never lacking." His tears fell, but they were no longer bitter. They were the first tears of awakening. In the days that followed, a clarity slowly appeared in Sahila's heart. He was no longer as tormented as before, but the anxiety hadn't entirely disappeared. Though he had learned to share a little, whenever he touched the jewel, he still trembled. A part of him still didn't truly dare to let go. Then an incident occurred. On a sweltering afternoon, the village market was packed. Sahila stepped in his ragged clothes covered in dust bowl in hand. He went from stall to stall, hoping for a bit of leftover rice. But that day, people looked at him with more contempt than usual. A large man growled, "You beggar, why do you follow us every day? Go away, don't dirty the market." Sahila lowered his head. Please, just a little food. But the man wouldn't listen. He stepped forward, snatched the bowl from Sahila's hand, and slammed it to the ground. The bowl shattered. The crowd burst into laughter. In an instant, fire flared in Sahila's chest. He wanted to shout to show them he was not useless. In his panic, he started to pull the jewel from his robe to hold it up and shout, "What are you laughing at? I have something more precious than everything you own, put together." His fingers touched the cloth pouch but stopped. His heart pounded. A terrible fear swept over him. If I show them, they'll steal it. If I reveal it, I'll have nothing left. He trembled, pulled his hand back, and collapsed to the ground. The crowd dispersed, leaving him huddled in the dust. The pent-up humiliation brought tears streaming down his face. That night, Sahila left the village. He wandered into the forest, his feet torn by stones, his stomach aching with hunger. A storm rose. Rain poured down. He crouched under a tree, clutching the pouch. For the first time, he shouted into the night, Why do I have a jewel and still suffer like this jewel? What use are you to me?" His shout vanished into the wind and rain. At that moment, Yamita appeared, as if he had been waiting. His cloak was soaked, but his eyes shone with calm. He approached, sat beside Sahila, and said nothing, only placed a light hand on his shoulder. Sahila burst into tears like a child. "Look at me. I have a jewel, yet I'm still just a beggar. I'm no better off, only more miserable. What should I do?" Silently, Yamita opened the pouch, took out the jewel and placed it in Sahila's palm. Its light flared in the rain. Yamita spoke slowly, each word resounding like thunder. "Sahila, you still don't understand. The jewel is not meant to be stored away. It is not a possession for you to guard. It is a mirror. It reflects the truth that you have always been complete. But you cling to it like someone afraid of loss. That is the very cause of your suffering." Sahila trembled. "But if I let go, I'll have nothing at all." Yamita looked straight into his eyes, sharp yet kind. "Do you think you truly possess anything? Even while clutching the jewel, you tremble. Tell me, does the thing you fear losing really belong to you? Or is it merely something external? The tighter you grasp, the more you hurt." Sahila bit his lip, his tears mingling with the rain. "I don't know how to let go." Yamita smiled gently. "Try. Put it on the ground just once. You'll see." Sahila looked at the jewel in his hand. His heart raced wildly. All these years he had lived in misery, then in fear. He had never tried to release it. His hand trembled. "What if I set it down and it disappears?" Yamita answered. "If it disappears, that means it was never yours. But if it remains, you will understand. It is not the jewel that gives you value. You are the treasure." Sahila closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His hand slowly opened. The jewel fell onto the wet ground, its light shimmering in the rain. In that moment, a strange silence echoed within him. No more cries, no more fear, only a gentle breath and the feeling of laying down a great burden. He sat there trembling, then laughed through his tears. I'm not afraid anymore." Yamita looked at him and nodded. "That's right. You have just stepped across the threshold. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is returning. Only when you dared to set the jewel down did you truly see that you were never poor." Sahila looked at the jewel's light, but this time it was different. He no longer saw it as something to keep. He saw it as a symbol. True value did not lie in the jewel, it lay in the freedom he found when he dared to let go. The sky gradually cleared. The rain stopped. Moonlight shone down, reflecting the jewel's brilliance. But in Sahila's heart, the light was brighter still. That night, he sat quietly, his heart full of peace. For the first time, he slept deeply, right there on the wet ground, beside the jewel he no longer clung to. At dawn, Sahila woke beneath the tree. The sky was clear, the breeze cool, the first light of day spreading across the damp earth. The jewel still lay there, sparkling like a large dewdrop, but this time he no longer rushed to seize it. He simply smiled, gazing at it as one would a flower, beautiful, but belonging to no one. Sahila murmured, "So I never truly owned you. You were only a mirror. What I needed to find wasn't you, but freedom within myself." He sat in silence for hours watching the river flow. In that stillness, a tranquil ease spread through him. For the first time in many years, he knew what it was to breathe without heaviness. When he returned to the village, people saw him walking, as before, ragged clothes, dusty hair. But something had changed. Before, his eyes were always lowered, full of shame. Now he walked slowly, eyes bright with a gentle smile. A woman saw him and scolded, begging again. Useless as ever, Sahila bowed, neither angry nor ashamed. He replied softly, "Please keep the food for your family. I have enough." The woman was surprised. She had never heard him answer like that. Another day, the children threw banana peels at him again, but instead of crying or growing angry, he picked them up and smiled. "Thank you, little ones. These peels can become compost for the soil. The soil will nourish the trees, and the trees will nourish people. Nothing is useless." The children stared blankly, then ran off. Word spread Sahila was no longer the same. People were curious, but few could explain the change. At night, he met Yamita again. The lamp in the pilgrim's eyes still shone, but this time his gaze was full of joy. "Sahila, you understand now, don't you?" Sahila bowed his head. "I understand. The jewel only reminded me that I have always had enough. What I needed to release was not the jewel, but my attachment. When I stopped clinging, I felt light. Strangely, though, I have nothing more than before. I no longer feel poor." Yamita nodded. "That is true wealth. Wealth isn't having many possessions but not being dependent on them. Wealth isn't gripping tightly, but knowing how to let go and still be enough." From then on, Sahila lived differently. He no longer begged with a miserable look. He went house to house, greeted people, helped with small chores, then received a little rice. If someone offered, he accepted. If someone refused, he smiled. He began to share more when he had extra rice. He gave some to another wanderer. A fellow sufferer asked, "Why do you give to me? You're as poor as I am." Sahila smiled gently. "Before I clung tightly and still felt afraid. Now I share, and my heart feels full." It turns out wealth or poverty isn't in the bowl of rice, but in whether the mind still fears losing. Those words spread throughout the village. People began to see Sahila differently, not as a pitiful beggar, but as a person of peaceful wisdom. One day, the village headman came to see him. "Sahila, I hear you've changed a lot. You're no longer suffering as before. What's your secret?" Sahila smiled. "There is no secret. I simply realized the greatest suffering isn't hunger, but attachment. When we cling, we suffer. When we let go, we are free." The headman was silent for a long time. Then he respectfully pressed his palms together. "Perhaps you are the richest man in this village." Sahila laughed, a light sound, like a passing breeze. From then on, though, he still wore old clothes and sometimes went hungry. Sahila was no longer a beggar. He became one who sowed seeds of peace in the village. Whoever met him heard a simple reminder: don't forget the jewel within yourself. It's there. No one can steal it. We only forget it ourselves. As time passed, the small village slowly changed. People argued less and distrusted less. When quarrels arose, they remembered Sahila's words: let go and see that you are enough. In suffering, they remembered his peaceful gaze. On a bright moonlit night, Sahila sat with Yamita by the river. The water flowed quietly. The moon shimmered on its surface. Sahila pressed his palms together. Thanks to you, I have found the path. Yamita smiled. Not thanks to me. You were the one who walked it. I only held up the mirror. You were the one who looked. Sahila bowed his head, eyes brimming. In his heart there were no more questions, no more fear, only gratitude and serenity. That night he looked at the jewel one last time. Then he placed it into the river. The water carried it away, its light glimmering with the current. He exhaled. I don't need you anymore. I have found the true jewel within myself. And he sat still like a silent mountain beneath the sky. From a beggar, Sahila had walked the path of liberation, not by having, but by letting go, not by keeping, but by daring to release. And that very selflessness turned his life into a lesson for the whole village and for anyone who met him. Many years later, the small village on the banks of the Ganges had changed remarkably. People lived more harmoniously, with less suspicion and less contention. Children no longer threw stones or banana peels at beggars. Adults, instead of scorning, began to listen to the simple words of one once despised. In the center of the village, people often saw Sahila sitting under the old Bodhi tree. The ragged robe still on his body, his feet still bare, yet his face radiant with peace. Children gathered around to hear his stories. Elders stopped by to hear his gentle reminders light as the wind. Don't think you are poor because you lack something. True poverty is when you forget that you already carry a treasure within. A man who had often scorned him now sat quietly and asked Sahila, "How can you be so calm? I have wealth, yet every night I'm anxious, afraid of losing it." Sahila smiled kindly, "Because you are still gripping tightly. When you let go, you'll see you don't truly lose. I once clutched a jewel thinking it was everything. But when I set it down, I realized the light had never left me. It was here all along." He placed his hand on his chest, where his heart beat gently. The man fell silent, eyes moist. One afternoon, the village headman came with several villagers. He bowed Sahila. "We want to build you a house so you won't have to endure sun and rain." Sahila shook his head. "I thank you for your kindness, but I don't need it. My true home is the stillness within. As long as I sit beneath this tree, I have a dwelling more solid than any house." Hearing this, the villagers were full of respect. They realized freedom doesn't lie in possessions, but in a mind free of clinging. One night, moonlight bathed the whole village. Children gathered around him again. A little girl asked innocently, "Grandpa, where is your jewel now?" Sahila laughed softly, his voice warm as a lullaby. "It went with the river. But do you know the real jewel isn't in a pocket? It's in our hearts. When we let go of fear and ego, the heart shines like a gem." The children fell silent, gazing up at the moon. They didn't fully understand, but in their eyes a seed was already sparkling. After that, whenever someone in the village grew angry or fell into sorrow, they reminded each other, "Remember Sahila's words. Don't forget the jewel within." And so a peaceful village grew from the story of a beggar. Years passed. When he was old and frail, Sahila sat by the river and recalled his journey. He whispered as if speaking to himself, "From a wretch, I learned that suffering doesn't come from lack, but from clinging to self. Happiness doesn't come from holding on, but from letting go." He closed his eyes with a contented smile. In that moment, a gentle breeze stirred, and the Bodhi leaves softly rustled like the applause of heaven and earth. People say that when Sahila left this world, his face was serene, like a river flowing into the sea. They believe the jewel in his heart had merged into the boundless ocean of selflessness. The lesson from Sahila's story quickly spread across the region. People didn't just remember a poor beggar gripping a jewel. More importantly, they remembered the transformation of his heart. From then on, generations reminded one another that letting go is not loss, but release from chains. In life, everyone fears letting go of a relationship, a small advantage, or old habits. But the more we hold, the more we suffer. Like Sahila clutching the jewel, thinking it was treasure, when in fact, it was only a burden that robbed him of sleep. Only when he dared to set it down did he feel light and free. So, letting go is not the same as losing. It is the brave act of unfastening the invisible chains that bind us. From this story, people also understood selflessness. Non-self is not emptiness, but seeing our connection with all beings and things. Non-self does not mean nothing remains, but loosening the narrow ego so we can see ourselves as part of the vast ocean. When Sahila stopped seeing himself as only a wretched beggar, he began to notice that pain and fear also lived in the wealthy and powerful. Thus, he no longer isolated himself, but opened his heart, feeling his connection with everyone around him. Non-self is when the I stops standing apart and the heart blends into the boundless life. And finally, perhaps, most profoundly, the precious jewel is not out in the world, but within every heart that knows how to return. For years, Sahila begged and believed he was poor, but the jewel in his pocket was only a symbol of a truth every person already carries, an inner light. When we forget it, we feel empty and lacking. When we return, we realize we were never truly poor. That light is Buddha nature, the seed of awakening the indestructible jewel no one can take. Therefore, the lesson does not end with the story of a beggar. It is a mirror reflecting our own lives. Whenever we feel suffering, remember perhaps we are holding something too tightly. Whenever we feel lonely, remember non-self is not losing, it is belonging. And whenever we feel poor, return to the heart where the shining jewel still waits to be recognized. And so, the story of the beggar and the precious jewel comes to a close, leaving a deep echo in the listener's heart. But the journey of Zen teachings does not end here. For beyond the jewel lies another mirror, the mirror of the shadow and the person. So now I invite you to listen to the next story, The Shadow and the Man. Zen story, The Shadow and the Man. Long ago, in a valley by the Ganges River, there was a man named Ravana. He was neither rich nor very poor. His life was as ordinary as anyone's, working as a day laborer in the fields and sitting by the fire at night. But within him there was a strange fear, the fear of his own shadow. Since childhood, Ravana had noticed that his shadow always followed him. Wherever he went, whatever he did, it never left. As he grew up, the obsession worsened. Each time the sun rose and his shadow stretched across the ground, He felt as if an invisible being were stalking him. He panted and ran, but the shadow kept pace. At night under the moon, the shadow fell long and stole his sleep. Sometimes Ravana shouted, "Who are you? Why do you cling to me? Leave me alone." But the only response was the silence of the night and the shadow still at his side. People in the village began to gossip. Ravana is possessed. No, he's gone mad. Who could be so terrified of their own shadow? They mocked him and avoided him. Ravana grew increasingly lonely. He thought, perhaps I truly am cursed by demons. One sweltering noon, Ravana ran full tilt across the fields. His long shadow clung to him relentlessly. Exhausted, he collapsed under a Bodhi tree. In despair, he wept like a child. At that moment, a figure appeared, Anira, a wandering ascetic. He wore a dark brown cloak, went barefoot, and walked unhurriedly. His face was weathered by sun and wind, but his eyes were calm and bright like a still lake. Anira stopped and looked at the writhing Ravana. In a warm, deep voice, he asked, "What are you running from?" Ravana looked up, eyes red. "Don't you see it? It's clinging to me, that shadow. It won't let me go." Anira looked down. In the sunlight, Ravana's shadow was clear. He smiled gently. "It is only your shadow." Ravana screamed, "No, it's my enemy. For years it has given me no peace. Wherever I go, it follows. When I sleep, it lurks. It's driven me to misery and madness." Anira sat beside him and spoke slowly. "The more you run, the more it follows. The more you fear, the larger it seems. The more you hate, the tighter it clings. But have you ever tried sitting still and looking straight at it?" Ravana froze, then shook his head violently. "Sit still. Are you crazy? If I stop, it will swallow me whole." Anira fell silent, his eyes steady on Ravana. He let the fear pour out without arguing. After a while, he said softly, "Remember, a shadow cannot exist without light. It has no separate substance. It appears only because you are there. If you understand that, the fear will vanish." Ravana panted, his heart racing. He couldn't believe it. After years of torment, someone was telling him the shadow was illusory. He cried out, "No, you don't understand. It is my suffering. It is the enemy that won't let me live in peace. Don't try to teach me impossible things." Anira looked at him and smiled kindly. "It's all right. You don't have to believe me yet. But one day when you are tired of running, you will remember my words." With that, he stood and walked away unhurriedly. Ravana watched him go, torn by conflict. Part of him wanted to believe. Part of him was terrified. He sat on the ground, clutching his head, muttering, "If the shadow is truly unreal, why do I still suffer like this? If it is truly nothing, why can't I escape it?" Those questions circled in his mind for days. From then on, Ravana began to pay closer attention. He noticed that when the sun rose high, the shadow grew short. When clouds covered the sky, it faded. When night fell, it disappeared. A glimmer of hope arose. Perhaps Anira was right. It had no self-nature of its own. It existed only because of light. But when the sun set and the shadow stretched long again, Ravana panicked once more. He screamed and cursed at the shadow. "You tormentor, you will never let me go." At night, Ravana couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, sweat soaking his brow. In the darkness, he still sensed the shadow lurking in his mind. Even without light, fear had sunk deep, becoming an invisible chain. He began to waste away. His body grew thin, his spirit unraveled. Villagers whispered when they saw him, "He won't live much longer. The obsession has already killed him." Yet in the depths of despair, Ravana remembered Anira's gentle eyes, and those words kept echoing. The more you run, the more the shadow follows. Sit still and look straight at it. He didn't fully understand, but a seed began to form in his heart. Maybe I must face it. Maybe it's time to stop. In the days after meeting Anira, Ravana was no longer the same. Those words kept resounding within him. The more you run, the more the shadow follows. The more you fear, the bigger it grows. Sit still and look straight at it. Every morning when the sun rose, Ravana looked at his shadow on the ground. At first, his heart still pounded and his hands trembled. Instinct urged him to run, but he remembered Anira's words and tried to stand still. After only a few seconds, cold sweat broke out. Then he couldn't bear it and bolted. And as always, the shadow stuck close. Panting, he collapsed and scolded himself. I'm such a fool. Why can't I do what he said? Just stand still, just look. And yet I don't dare. Night fell, and Ravana tossed and turned. He dreamed of running endlessly across a boundless field, a giant dark shadow chasing him, swallowing every step. He screamed, drenched in sweat, and woke in the middle of the night with his heart pounding. The next day, Ravana decided to find Anira again. He searched the region and finally found him sitting in the shade by the river, eyes closed, breathing steadily. Ravana rushed over and fell to his knees. Please save me, I can't endure this anymore. I tried, but I'm too afraid. How can I sit still when it keeps chasing me? Anira opened his eyes and looked at him calmly. You want to escape, yet you cling tightly to fear. You want peace, yet you fight yourself. Remember, the shadow isn't an enemy. It only reflects you. The more you reject it, the more it torments you. Ravana trembled. But it feels so real. It exists and it makes me suffer. You say it isn't real, but my suffering is real. Anira nodded. Yes, the suffering is real, but its cause is illusory. Like someone trapped in a nightmare, the fear in the dream is real, but the monster is not. You're living inside a nightmare your own mind has created. Ravana lowered his head, tears streaming down. He whispered, Then what should I do? Please teach me. Anira pointed to the ground. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, sit down. Don't run. Don't push it away. Let the shadow be there just as it is. Breathe and look. Even if your heart trembles, let it tremble. Even if fear surges, let it surge. You only need not run. That is the first step. Ravana looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes, though still heavy with worry. He nodded. The next morning, Ravana did exactly as told. He chose an open patch of ground where the sunlight fell clearly. He sat, folded his legs, and looked at the shadow stretched out before him. His heart pounded like a drum. In an instant, the shadow seemed like a black beast lunging at him. Sweat poured. His whole body shook. His throat tightened. He cried out, I can't stand it. It wants to kill me. He leapt up and ran until he was out of breath. The shadow followed again. He fell to the ground, sobbing like a child. That night, Ravana went to Anira. His voice choked. I failed. I can't sit still. It's too terrifying. You don't understand. Anira was silent, looking at him for a long time, then said, Do you think I've never been afraid I had my own shadows? Greed, anger, delusion, arrogance. I ran too. But the shadow never disappears by running. It only fades when you light the inner lamp. You don't need to defeat it. You only need to understand it. Ravana wept. I want peace, but I'm too weak. Anira smiled. Strength doesn't come from denying weakness, but from daring to sit with it. Try again tomorrow. Failing is fine. Keep failing until you grow familiar with it. One day you'll realize there was nothing to fear at all. Those teachings were like drops of water falling into Ravana's heart. He began practicing every day. At first, he could sit only a few seconds before panic struck. Gradually, a few seconds became a minute became 10. The fear remained, but it was no longer as fierce. One night, he sat still under the moon, watching his shadow stretch across the ground. He trembled, but didn't run. In that fear, he suddenly realized, the shadow can't do anything to me. It just stands there. The thought flashed and he burst into tears. The next day, he told Anira, I'm beginning to see. It doesn't truly harm me. It only reflects me. But I still feel anger inside and want to drive it away. Anira nodded. Yes. You've taken the first step. The shadow is only an image, but the path doesn't end here. You must learn to love that shadow as a part of yourself. Only when you accept it will it truly dissolve. Ravana was stunned. Love the shadow. How could that be? He didn't understand yet, but a new seed had been planted. From then on, Ravana practiced looking at the shadow with different eyes. When the shadow fell on the ground, he whispered, You are a part of me. You're no longer my enemy. At first, his mouth said the words, but his heart didn't believe them. Gradually, his chest felt less tight. The obsession eased, replaced by curiosity. If the shadow isn't an enemy, what is it really? One night, Ravana dreamed he no longer ran. He sat still, and the shadow melted into the light, leaving a clear, open space. Waking up, he sighed. Perhaps I'm on the right path. On a late summer afternoon, the sun burned red over the parched fields. Ravana sat beneath a Bodhi tree, watching his shadow stretch like a dark wound. Days of practice had made him more familiar with its presence, yet deep in his heart, a restlessness remained. He whispered, You're still here. You've never left me. Anira's words rang again. Sit still, look straight at it. Don't run. This time, Ravana resolved to summon all his courage. He folded his legs, closed his eyes, then opened them. The dark shadow remained motionless, silent. He sat still, breath quick, heart pounding, as if to burst. Sweat gathered on his brow. In a moment, the shadow seemed to swell thick and black, as if to engulf his entire body. No longer small at his feet, it became a giant monster, jaws open to swallow him. Ravana panicked and shouted, No, I don't want to die. Leave me alone. He sprang up to flee, but stopped. A voice within spoke, If you run, you'll never escape. He sank back down, tears streaming. Clutching his head, he cried out, Anira, I can't. I'm too weak. Just then, a calm voice sounded behind him. You are not weak, Ravana. You simply don't trust the light within yourself. Ravana turned. Anira stood there, tall and slender, eyes bright and gentle. He whispered, I see it as enormous. It wants to swallow me. Anira stepped forward, placed a hand on Ravana's shoulder, his voice like thunder, yet gentle. The more you fear, the larger it grows. The more you run, the stronger it becomes. But tell me, where does it get its power if not from you? Ravana panted, trembling. If I stop running, will it disappear? Anira nodded. You don't need to destroy it. You only need to bring light. When the inner light dawns, the shadow dissolves. Ravana looked again at the great black mass covering earth and sky, the embodiment of every fear, hatred, and pain within him. His whole body shook, but this time, instead of running, he closed his eyes and took a deep, steady breath. He exhaled, opened his eyes, and sat still. The dark shape still loomed, but it no longer lunged. It simply stood wavering in the sunlight. He murmured, "You are me, and I am you." A strange sensation spread through him. The fear faded, replaced by acceptance. The shadow remained, but no longer as an enemy. It was simply a reflection. Anira smiled and nodded. Exactly. When you dare to look directly, you see the shadow has never had power of its own. It is only an image. The real power lies in the light, and that light is in you. Tears burst from Ravana's eyes. He laughed, a sound ringing across the fields. My God, all these years I've only been running from myself. What I feared wasn't the shadow, but the terror in my own heart. The shadow gradually shrank small again, as before. Ravana looked at it without fear. He sighed, feeling as light as if he'd set down a burden carried for decades. But the test wasn't over. That night when the moon rose, Ravana sat by the river. His shadow stretched across the water, flickering, distorted. This time, fear didn't come from the shape, but from a thought. Can I keep this peace, or will fear return tomorrow? He looked at the shadow in the water and asked, "Will you haunt me again? Will you come back?" Anira, sitting nearby, answered softly, "Fear will always try to return, but now you know what to do. You don't have to defeat it or drive it away. If you simply stop and smile, it will fade. Peace doesn't come from the shadow disappearing, but from you no longer being bound by it." Ravana was silent, gazing at the moon. In that moment, he understood. Peace isn't something permanent that comes from outside. It is a choice made in each breath. He bowed his head and whispered, "Thank you, Anira. Now I know the shadow never harmed me. I was the one tormenting myself." The wind blew. Moonlight silvered the river. Ravana sat quietly for the first time, feeling the shadow, like an old friend, not an enemy, just a part of himself. From the night Ravana faced the shadow and realized it was no longer an enemy, a great change took place in his heart. Though the shadow still appeared whenever light fell, he no longer trembled. Instead, he regarded it like a familiar companion, an inseparable part of life. The next morning, Ravana walked into the village. People were astonished. No more frantic, bearing no more fearful eyes. He walked slowly, looking straight ahead, with a slight smile on his lips. A child pointed and asked his mother in surprise, "Mom, is that Ravana? Why does he look so different?" The mother nodded, gazing at Ravana with curiosity and respect. For so long, people had known him only as a man tormented by his shadow. Now Ravana appeared with a different presence, calm and light. A man approached and asked Ravana, "What happened to you? Are you no longer afraid of the shadow?" Ravana smiled gently. "I never needed to fear it. It's only a part of me, nothing more. For years I turned it into an enemy. Now I know it merely reflects me. When I accept it, it has no power." The man pondered. Those around listened, astonished. Ravana's words were simple, yet held a truth hard to grasp. From that day, Ravana began living a different life. He no longer ran. Instead, each morning he sat in the sun, quietly observing the shadow beside him. Some days he smiled and said softly, "Stay if you like. I won't chase you and I won't flee. You walk with me, I accept you." At first, villagers thought he was mad, but gradually they sensed something deeper. In Ravana's eyes, they saw a peace they themselves had never known. One day, a woman came to Ravana, her voice full of worry. "I lost my husband early and am raising my child alone. I always feel the shadow of loneliness clinging to me. I fear it I hate it." "How can I escape?" Ravana listened, then gently said, "You don't need to escape. Sit still and look straight at that shadow. See it as a part of you. When you accept it, you'll see it dissolve in the light of the love you give yourself." The woman burst into tears. His words seemed to illuminate her soul. From then on, Ravana became a source of emotional support for many people. He didn't preach or force anything. He simply recounted his experience with the shadow. What listeners found in him wasn't distant philosophy, but a truthful story from a life full of suffering and transformation. One night, Ravana sat with Anira by the river. The moon was bright, their shadows stretching long across the sand. Ravana smiled, pointing at the shadows. "Do you see, it's still here, but now it doesn't haunt me anymore. It's like a companion. Sometimes I even feel grateful for it. Without it, I wouldn't have learned this lesson." Anira nodded, his eyes warm. "That's right. The greatest enemy is sometimes the greatest teacher. Your shadow taught you how to return to yourself." Ravana reflected. "Now I understand the shadow doesn't vanish on its own. It only reminds me of the light. The more I run, the farther I am from the light. Only when I stop does the light shine, and the shadow is no longer a threat." Anira smiled. "You've come far, Ravana. But remember, the journey doesn't end here. You've overcome your fear, but many people are still haunted by the shadows in their hearts. Tell your story, plant seeds for them." From then on, Ravana began sharing with the village. He didn't lecture like a spiritual teacher. He simply spoke as someone who had suffered. Every word was genuine, touching listeners' hearts. He often said, "The shadow isn't scary. It's only a reflection. Suffering doesn't come from the shadow, but from our refusal to look at it. When we turn away, it grows. When we run, it chases. But when we sit still, it dissolves." The villagers gradually changed. They no longer feared the inner darkness as before. They practiced sitting still and looking straight at their fear and sorrow instead of running away. The children in the village also loved to sit around Ravana and listen to his stories. One child once asked Grandpa, "Will the shadow disappear forever?" Ravana smiled gently. "No. It will still be there when light shines, but it won't make us suffer anymore, because we know it's only a shadow. A shadow isn't real. What's real is the light within you. When the light rises, the shadow has no power." The child nodded innocently, eyes sparkling. A seed of wisdom had been planted in that young heart. Gradually, Ravana was no longer called the man haunted by his shadow. People called him a friend of the light. Everyone saw in him a living example. From suffering, one can reach serenity. From fear, one can find freedom. One afternoon, he sat under the Bodhi tree sunlight, spreading down his shadow long on the ground. He looked at it and whispered with a smile, "Thank you. Because of you, I learned how to return. Because of you, I learned to let go. And because of you, I understand there's no need for me and no need for you, because you and I were never separate." Those whispered words faded into the windlight as a wordless prayer. From then on, Ravana lived simply seeking neither fame nor respect. He quietly sowed reminders. Stop instead of running. Look instead of fearing. Let go instead of clinging. It was how he repaid the shadow, once an enemy, now a friend and a mirror reflecting the truth of the self. Many years passed since the day Ravana stopped running and dared to face his shadow. The villagers no longer saw him as deranged, but as someone who had found something deeper than ordinary life. He wasn't a monk, nor did he become a famous sage. Yet his simple life became a guiding light for many. Whenever someone suffering came to him, Ravana would tell a very real story. Long ago, I used to run from my own shadow. I hated it, feared it wanted to destroy it, but the more I ran, the more it followed. Only when I sat down and dared to look straight at it did I understand it was never the enemy. It only reflected me, and from then on, it no longer haunted me. Listeners fell silent. In their eyes, the truth gradually brightened. The shadow isn't only an outline under the sun, but also the shadow of fears, anger, and pain that each person carries inside. One evening at sunset, a young man came to Ravana. He spoke with deep anxiety. "Sir, there is always a dark shadow in my heart. It is envy. Whenever I see others succeed, I grow restless and upset. I hate that shadow, but I can't drive it away." Ravana smiled kindly. "My son, that shadow is your teacher. It reminds you that within you there is still an ego that wants to compete. Don't hate it. Sit down, look at it, and see that it is only a reflection of inner lack. When you know you have enough, that shadow of envy will dissolve." The young man bowed his head, eyes brimming with tears. Another day, an old woman came sobbing. "I lost my son. Every night, the shadow of loss covers me completely. It chokes my heart. I don't want to live anymore." Ravana listened, then gently held her hand. Loss is the shadow of love. If you dare to look straight at that shadow, you'll see that love has never been lost. Your son no longer has a form, but the love remains here. Don't drive away the shadow of sorrow. Look deeply into it, and you'll see the light of undying love. The old woman wept, but this time they were tears of relief. From those conversations, people gradually realized the greatest lessons Ravana offered were letting go and non-self. Letting go, not throwing away or denying, but daring to sit with fear, pain, and anger, to see their only shadows. Letting go is acknowledging, accepting, then smiling as they fade, just as Ravana ended his days of running when he dared to sit down and breathe. Non-self, not emptiness or losing everything, but recognizing that the shadow and the person are never separate. A shadow cannot exist without the body, the light, and the ground. Likewise, the human self cannot exist independently. When Ravana understood the shadow had no separate substance, he also understood that the ego is only a composite of many conditions. It is not an unchanging entity. To see non-self is to see connection with all things and to stop fighting oneself. These words spread far and wide, becoming a living lesson for the whole region. Letting go is not loss, but release from chains. Non-self is not emptiness, but seeing our bond with all things. The shadow has never been the enemy. It only reminds us of the light within. At the end of his life, Ravana sat beneath the Bodhi tree, where he had once collapsed years before. The sunset stretched long, and his shadow lay on the ground. He looked at it, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you. Without you, I would never have learned this lesson. Because of you, I understand what letting go is, and what non-self is." People say that when Ravana took his last breath, his face shone like moonlight. He passed gently like someone truly free. When we run from ourselves, suffering never leaves. The more we run, the more the inner shadow chases us. That shadow may be a fear we dare not name, an anger we refuse to admit, or an old wound we try to hide. We think avoidance makes it disappear, but in truth, the running only feeds it. It grows each day from our own denial. But here is something few expect when we dare to sit down, be still, and face that shadow. we discover a simple truth. The shadow is only a shadow. It has no form of its own, no real power. It is merely a reflection of what exists within us. Just as an outdoor shadow appears only when there is light, the inner shadow exists only when we nourish it with fear, rejection, and attachment. If we sit still, look directly, and breathe deeply, we see there is nothing to fear. It simply stands there silent. And in the very moment we let go, when we stop feeding it, that shadow will fade. It doesn't vanish because we defeat it, but because we no longer fuel its existence. Then something wondrous appears. The light that has always been in our heart begins to shine. That light is serenity, wisdom, and love, which we have always carried within. For so long it was covered by the shadow of ego and fear. But when the shadow dissolves, that light radiates, illuminating not only ourselves, but those around us. This is the path of letting go and non-self. Letting go does not mean losing. It means no longer nourishing the chains within. Non-self does not mean emptiness. It means seeing we have never been separate between light and shadow, between ourselves and all life around us. When we understand this, we no longer need to run. We only need to stop, return, and smile at ourselves. The shadow and the man comes to a close, leaving a lingering echo in the listener's heart. Truth is not out there, but within us. Yet Zen teachings never end with a single lesson. After the shadow comes another reminder. Do not confuse the means with the end. Do not cling to the finger and forget the moon. So now please step into the next story, the finger pointing to the moon. Zen story, The Finger Pointing to the Moon. Long ago, in a peaceful little village, there was a young man named Niraya. Since childhood, Niraya had been known for his intelligence and had long harbored a desire to seek the truth. In his bright eyes, everyone could see an earnest longing to touch the deeper reality of life. But precisely because of that yearning, Niraya was easily attached to outward things, mistaking them for the very truth he sought. On a full moon night, when the whole village gathered under the Bodhi tree to hear the teaching, a wise teacher named Dharmananda stood before the crowd. Golden moonlight reflected on the still river, and the night breeze gently rustled the leaves. The teacher raised his hand index finger, pointing to the sky, and said, "Look at the moon. It symbolizes the truth. All my teachings, all methods, are just the finger pointing toward that light. Do not stop at the finger. Lift your gaze and see the moon." The crowd fell silent. Everyone's eyes followed the teacher's finger. Some marveled, "The moon is so beautiful." Some quietly shed tears, as if their hearts had brightened. But Niraya was different. His eyes did not leave the teacher's finger. He studied every vein, every glint of light on the finger under the moon. A thought echoed within him. Perhaps the secret of enlightenment lies right in this finger. If I memorize its form, surely I will understand the truth. After the talk, when everyone dispersed, Niraya still sat there muttering to himself, "That finger is the key. Many look at the moon, but only I truly see the finger. I will remember it. I will hold on to it." From that day, Niraya began to imitate the teacher's gesture. He stood before the water's surface, raised his index finger, and practiced the exact same posture. When he met friends, he also pointed to the sky and said mysteriously, "Do you know, this is the sign of truth." The villagers laughed. "Niraya, you're being silly. The teacher told us to look at the moon. Why do you keep staring at the finger? But Niraya insisted. You don't understand anything. The finger is what matters. Without the finger, how would you know where the moon is? Time passed, and Niraya became increasingly obsessed with the finger. In his mind, Dharmananda's finger became a sacred symbol. He believed that as long as he held on to that image, he would find enlightenment. One afternoon, Niraya went to the teacher and knelt respectfully. Master, please, teach me more deeply about the finger pointing to the moon. I believe that is the secret to liberation. Dharmananda looked at him, his eyes kind, yet tinged with sadness. Niraya, you still don't understand. The finger is not the moon. It is only a means. Do not stop there. Niraya looked up bewildered. But Master, without the finger, I wouldn't know where the moon is. Doesn't that mean the finger is the most important? The teacher shook his head and spoke slowly. You're right that the finger is needed to show the way. But if you only look at it and forget to raise your gaze, you'll forever see only the finger and never the moon. You are clinging to the means and forgetting the end. Those words cut into Niraya's mind like a blade, but instead of awakening, he grew even more confused. If the finger wasn't important, why did the teacher raise it? If it were enough to look at the moon, why need the finger at all? He went home full of doubt. From then on, Niraya wandered into a maze of his own making. He went around the village telling people he possessed a sacred secret, the finger that points to the moon. He described in detail every movement, the way to lift the hand, the exact angle of light. At first, listeners were curious. Later, they were disappointed. They told each other, Niraya only looks at the finger. He understands nothing about the moon. But Niraya didn't believe them. He told himself, they lack wisdom. One day I'll show them the greatness of this finger. One night Niraya went alone to the river. The full moon hung bright in the sky. He raised his finger and stared at it, but his heart was in turmoil. Unconsciously he blurted out, what does this finger truly mean? Why do I still not find peace? The more I cling, the emptier I feel. In that moment, the image of Teacher Dharmananda arose in his mind, kind eyes, a gentle voice. The finger is not the moon. Do not stop there. Niraya sat dazed by the riverbank, watching his finger tremble in the moonlight. Tears streamed down his young face. A question echoed within him without an answer. If the finger isn't the moon, then where is the moon, and what path truly leads to the light? From that day, Niraya seemed caught in a trance. He was convinced he held a sacred secret that no one in the village understood. Every day he stood in the marketplace, raised his finger to the sky, and declared, people, you keep gazing at the moon without knowing the moon is merely what's being pointed to. The finger is what matters. Without the finger, how would you know where to look? At first, people stopped to watch curious. An old woman chuckled. What a funny boy. The moon is plain in the sky for all to see. Who needs a finger? A young man jeered. If the finger is what matters, raise your hand all you like. No one will find the moon that way. People laughed and walked off. But Niraya didn't care. He told himself, they just don't understand yet. One day they'll see I'm right. Day by day, Niraya grew more fervent. He became obsessed memorizing every wrinkle on Dharmananda's finger. He even drew the finger on the ground, carved it into wood, and embroidered it on cloth. He called it the sign of enlightenment Someone visited and asked Niraya, "Why don't you look at the moon but keep looking at the hand?" Niraya replied solemnly, "You don't understand. The moon can vanish behind clouds, but this finger is always here. Cling to it, and I'll never lose my way." His words made listeners shake their heads, but deep down, Niraya truly believed. On a bright moonlit night, Dharmananda taught again under the Bodhi tree. He pointed to the sky, his voice steady and warm. "Look at the moon. It says nothing yet. It illuminates everywhere. Truth is the same, needing neither words nor form. Perceive it directly. Do not let the means obscure the light." The crowd listened intently. Many nodded, but Niraya still focused only on the finger. The moon shone brilliantly above, yet to him, everything was contained in the shape of the teacher's finger. After the talk, Niraya went to the teacher again. He knelt and pleaded, "Master, please, teach me more about the finger. I have carved its image everywhere, but I still feel restless. Perhaps I haven't grasped the secret fully." Dharmananda looked at him for a long time. His voice was both gentle and stern. Niraya listened carefully. "The finger is not the truth. It only helps you direct your gaze to the moon. You are clinging to form, and that's why you're uneasy. The more you cling, the farther you stray. Let go." Niraya lowered his head and fell silent. Conflict surged within him. Let go. How could he? All this time he had poured his heart into the finger. If he let it go, what would remain? In the days that followed, Niraya entered a strange state. The more he tried to hold the image of the finger, the more exhausted he felt. He walked through the village, raised his hand, but no one paid attention anymore. People avoided his gaze. Children even ran after him, teasing. The finger. The finger. Niraya blushed with anger and shouted, "Be quiet. This is a great secret you're not worthy to understand." But the more he shouted, the emptier he felt. At night he sat alone by the river, tears falling. Why I've held on tightly, believed with all my heart. Why do I still not find peace? Finger, why don't you lead me to the moon? One night he went to the teacher again. A surge of resentment rose within him. Kneeling, his voice trembled with reproach. "Master, you deceived me. You said the finger points to the moon, but I see only the finger. For years I've clung to it, carved it everywhere, yet the light never comes. I'm exhausted. Is it all just an illusion?" Dharmananda looked at him without anger or blame, only with a sigh. "Niraya, I never deceived you. You deceived yourself. You clung to the sign and forgot the goal. The finger has never been the truth. It merely reminds you to lift your gaze. But you stopped there. The moon has always been in the sky. It has never left you. You only need to look up." Hearing this, Niraya's heart was stirred, yet torn. Look up. Could it be so simple? If so, what have I been living for all these years? He left in turmoil. Part of him wanted to believe the teacher's words. Part of him still regretted the sacred finger he had clung to for so long. From then on, Niraya lived as if lost between two worlds. On one side, attachment to the finger. On the other, the teacher's reminder. Each night he watched his finger tremble under the moonlight, his heart racked with struggle. If I let go, will I lose everything? If I keep holding on, will I remain in suffering forever? That question tormented him and led to a turning point in his life when he had to face the very depths of attachment to see the truth clearly. The finger is never the moon. On a bright moonlit night under a radiant sky, Niraya sat alone on the riverbank. He raised his finger, staring at it under the moon, trembling. Cold sweat ran down his back. A storm of anger and despair surged in him. All these years I've guarded you like a treasure, but you've led me nowhere. The light remains distant. My heart is still empty. He gritted his teeth and shouted at the finger's shadow on the water. You deceived me. You're just a dry bone. I keep gnawing with no taste. You are not the moon. You are nothing at all. His cry echoed across the empty fields, cutting into his heart like a blade. The suffering flared up stronger than ever. In his fury, Niraya ran toward the mountains to find teacher Dharmananda. When he saw the teacher, he knelt not in reverence this time, but in anger and pain. Master, you deceived me. You raised your finger and said it leads to the moon, but I see only the finger. I went mad believing in it, and now I'm left with emptiness. Why did you do this to me? Dharmananda gazed at his student in silence. Moonlight bathed the teacher's face. His eyes were deep and peaceful, like a lake. He spoke slowly, Niraya. I never deceived you. I merely raised a finger. I told you to look at the moon, but you stopped at the finger. You clung to it and worshipped it. You refused to lift your gaze. The fault lies neither with the finger nor with me. It lies in the attachment within your mind. Niraya clenched his fists, his voice choked. But master, without the finger, how would I know where the moon is? Dharmananda nodded. Yes, the finger is needed to point the way, but that's all. Once you know where the moon is, you must look up. You can't drink water by licking the finger that points to the well. You can't fill your stomach by gazing at a drawing of a cake. You are hungry and thirsty, yet you cling to something that cannot nourish you. Those words struck straight into Niraya's heart. He burst into tears and bowed his head to the ground. Master, I've been so foolish. I've wasted so many years clinging to a sign. But how can I let go? If I let go, what will I have left? Dharmananda placed a hand on his disciple's shoulder, his voice gentle yet firm. You will have yourself whole and complete. You will have the moonlight you've forgotten. Letting go of the finger is not loss. It is freedom from what blocks you from seeing the truth. That night, Niraya sat before the teacher. Tears fell as a storm raged in his heart. He looked at his finger, then at the moon. All this time the moon had still shone in the sky, never once disappearing. It was only that his eyes were fixed on the finger, so he did not see it. He murmured, "The moon is there. The moon is still there. Why don't I look?" A light breeze blew, making him shiver. His mind seemed illuminated. All his suffering was not because of the finger, but because he took the finger to be everything. He lifted his gaze, and for the first time in many years, looked straight at the moon. Light poured into his eyes, and his heart choking him with emotion. He began to weep, but they were tears of awakening. Here is the moon. It's still shining. It has never left me. Dharmananda smiled kindly. That's right. The moon was never far. You only needed to look up. Remember this, Niraya, the means is not the end. The finger points the way. Do not mistake it for the moon. That moment was the climax of Niraya's journey. All his attachments crumbled, but at the same time, a fear arose in him. Will I be able to keep this clarity, or will I fall back into attachment tomorrow? As if reading his thoughts, Dharmananda said, Do not worry about keeping it, and do not fear losing it. Moonlight does not belong to you, but you can merge with it. As long as you let go, that light will always shine. If you cling, it will turn into darkness in your heart. Niraya bowed, his whole body trembling. For the first time, he clearly felt what it meant to touch the truth, not through form, not through symbols, but through direct experience in the present moment. That night, Niraya sat in stillness for a long time. The finger was still there, its shadow still on the ground, but now it no longer obscured the moonlight. It was only a means, a bridge, nothing more. He smiled and whispered, "Thank you, finger. Because of you, I learned to return to the true light." From the night he faced that truth, Niraya changed. No more tense demeanor, no more eyes fixed only on the finger. The next morning, as the sun rose, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, his gaze lifted to the sky. The moon faded and daylight filled the world, but in Niraya's heart remained the sense that the light had never left him. A villager saw him and asked in surprise, "Niraya, why do you look so different? You're no longer raising your hand or shouting." Niraya smiled gently. "Because I understand now. The finger is not the moon. All this time I was mistaken. Now I know the true light isn't in the finger, it's in the vast sky." The man blinked, then lifted his own gaze. Though the moon had grown faint, a new brightness seemed to open in his heart. From that day on, Niraya began to live differently. He no longer flaunted the finger, no longer carved it into wood or embroidered it on cloth. Instead, each evening when the moon rose, he simply sat, breathed, and watched its gentle light spread across the earth. In the quiet, he whispered, "The light was never far. I only need to lift my head to see it." Gradually, people came to Niraya again, but this time not to mock or gawk, but to listen. A young man asked Niraya, "Before you always spoke about the finger. Now you never mention it. What have you found?" Niraya answered in a calm, warm voice. "I found a simple truth. The means is only a bridge. If we cling to it, we get lost. If we use it to direct our gaze, we see. And once we've seen, we must let the means go like a boat that carries us across the river. Once we reach the shore, we leave the boat. If we cling to it, we'll never set foot on land." The young man nodded, a light dawning within. One evening, a girl came in tears. "Niraya, the image of someone I loved and lost is always in my heart. I hold on to it and cannot let go. It makes me suffer, yet I fear that if I let go, I will forget him." Niraya listened, then spoke gently. "That person is like the finger. He pointed you toward love. But love is not contained in his image. It lives in your own heart. If you grasp his image tightly, you will suffer. If you let go, you will see that the love remains intact, bright as the moon never lost." The girl fell silent. Tears still flowed, but this time they were tears of relief. Those simple words spread throughout the village. People began to understand, not form, not symbols, not rituals, but the living truth is what must be seen. The elders whispered, "Once Niraya was obsessed with the finger. Now he truly sees the moon." Children loved to sit around Niraya and listen to his stories. One little one asked Grandpa, "Then is the finger useless?" Niraya smiled kindly. "No, it isn't useless. Without the finger, we wouldn't know where the moon is. But remember, the finger is only for pointing, not for worship. You must look up, don't stop at the finger." The child nodded, clear eyes glimmering with moonlight. Another time, Niraya sat by the river with Dharmananda. The full moon shimmered on the water, wondrously beautiful. Niraya pressed his palms together and said, "Master, thanks to you, I no longer cling to the finger. Now I see the moon, and I understand. The light has never left us." Dharmananda smiled. "Niraya, remember this. The moon does not belong to you. That light belongs to no one. It shines on all. When you let go of the self, you merge with that light. When you cling, you will feel small and lacking. Niraya bowed his heart filled with gratitude. From then on, Niraya's life grew serene. He no longer anxiously searched for secrets or strained to hold on to appearances. He lived at ease, feeling the moonlight in each breath and each step. Years passed, and Niraya's name was no longer tied to the one obsessed with the finger. Villagers and even people from neighboring areas called him by another name, the one who sees the moon. Each full moon, people gathered around Niraya, not to hear lofty theories, but to feel the peace that flowed from the way he told his stories. He didn't preach or instruct. He spoke from his own experience. Long ago, I lost my way by clinging to the finger. I thought it was everything, and so I suffered. But when I let it go, I saw the moon had never been far. Any of us can see the light. Just lift your gaze. Just let go of attachment. Listeners were silent. In their eyes, the moonlight shimmered. One day, a middle-aged man came to find Niraya. His face was dark, his shoulders heavy. Niraya, my business failed. I've lost everything. My life feels ruined. The shadow of poverty clings to me. I'm ashamed before everyone. How can I go on? Niraya looked at him and smiled softly. My friend, wealth is like the finger. It's needed to point the way, but it's not the light. You're clinging to it as if it were everything. Let it go and you'll see the moon is still in the sky. You still have life, love, and the ability to begin again. Don't confuse the means with the end. The man fell silent. Tears welled up as if a long-held burden had finally been lifted. Another time, a young mother came holding her child, her voice trembling. Niraya, my child is weak and ill. I'm always afraid of losing him. This fear is exhausting me. What should I do? Niraya gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You're looking at the finger that is the fear of loss. But if you let go, you'll see the moon, the love you have for your child. That love does not disappear even when the body changes. Don't let fear dim the light of love. The mother hugged her child, eyes shining. Those simple words became a deep comfort. In his later years, Niraya still lived simply. Each evening he sat by the river, eyes on the moon. He whispered, "Thank you, finger. Through you, I learned what it is to be lost. Through you, I learned to let go. And thank you, moon, for never leaving me, only waiting for me to lift my head." People said that on the night Niraya passed, the moon shone brighter than usual. His face was serene, a faint smile on his lips. He had let everything go and light filled his heart. Letting go never means losing. People often fear letting go, thinking that their hands will be empty and their hearts will feel hollow. But the truth is, the opposite letting go is unfastening chains, the ease after carrying a load too heavy for too long. Like Niraya, who clung to the finger as if it were a treasure. The more he held, the more exhausted and lost he became. Only when he dared to let go did he see the moon still shining in the sky, never having left him. So it is in our lives today. Sometimes we clutch money, status, a relationship, a compliment, thinking that is happiness. But the tighter we grasp, the more we fear losing. The more we hold, the heavier we feel. Only by letting go do we see the truth within. Happiness is simple. It's not in what we grasp, but in the freedom of a heart unbound. So, it is with non-self. Many think non-self means losing everything, becoming empty. In fact, non-self is expansion. When Niraya stopped making the I and the finger, The center, he realized he was connected to vast light. Non-self doesn't erase us. It lets us see we're not separate like a dewdrop falling into the sea. It doesn't vanish. It becomes part of the boundless ocean. That is non-self, no more walls of separation, but emerging into the greater life. In our lives today, how often do we clutch at the finger, a success, a title, an image of ourselves? We want others to approve. In our haste to hold on, we forget the moon peace, love the truth within. Then we suffer because the finger is never the goal. But if we dare to let go and return, we discover the light has never been lost, love has never left, and peace has always been within us. And so, the story, the finger, pointing to the moon, comes to a close, leaving a quiet resonance in the heart. Do not confuse the means with the end. The finger points the way, but the moon is what we must see. Yet the journey of Zen teachings does not end here. After understanding that the means is not the end, we must learn another lesson. A tiny drop of water, seemingly separate, has never been apart from the ocean. So please, step with me into the next story, the dewdrop and the ocean. Zen story, the dewdrop and the ocean. Long ago, in an old village with red dirt roads and golden thatched roofs, there lived a young man named Arika. Since childhood, Arika had eyes that seemed to question the whole sky. Who am I? Where did I come from? And why is there a quiet emptiness in my heart that no one can fill? He was quick and hard-working, loved by the villagers. But as night fell, when crickets sang and the wind brushed the thatch, he felt a longing he couldn't name. One afternoon, he stood by the well and watched the bucket being drawn up. The water shimmered in the sunlight. He scooped some up, the coolness running along his hand. How strange, Arika thought, the water here. The rainwater, the river water. How are they alike, and how are they different? That night, Arika lay listening to the rain. In his dream, he became a dewdrop, just fallen from a cloud, landing on a leaf, then slipping off its edge, falling into a stream, and floating out into a wide river. There, the dewdrop vaguely heard a distant call from something vaster, the sea. He woke with a start, his heart still beating to the rhythm of the dream. The next morning, Arika went to a small hermitage at the edge of the village, where a wandering practitioner often stopped with the changing seasons. His name was Sanghamitra, slender frame, rough earth-colored robe, eyes as serene as an unruffled lake. Villagers said Sanghamitra had followed great teachers, heard teachings in far forests, and understood things ordinary people found hard to grasp. Arika pressed his palms together, hesitant. Master, there's an emptiness in my heart. I work hard and give my all to my family and friends, but at night, my heart flows toward a place I can't name. Sanghamitra looked at Arika and smiled. What would you compare your heart to? To a dewdrop just fallen from a cloud master. It wants to return to something vast, but doesn't know the way. How many times have you had that dream since I was small? Whenever I see water, I remember. Sanghamitra nodded, his voice warm and slow. Good. You already have the seed. That seed is called turning the light around, a mind that knows how to come home. But a dewdrop doesn't reach the ocean by clinging tightly to the leaf, the stream, or the river. It only needs to move and to let go. Let go. Of what? Let go of the notion that it is separate. The answer stunned Arika. Separate. All his life he'd believed himself a separate being, full of lack, needing to gather more to be enough. If I'm not separate, he thought, then why do I feel lonely? It was as if Sanghamitra read his thoughts. Loneliness is born when we mistakenly think we're a dewdrop torn away. You hurt because you think you don't belong, but look closely within a single drop. There are clouds, wind river, and sea. Only our eyes don't yet see it. Arika asked again. Then what must I do to see, look, and sit still? Then walk as if at home. Breathe as though you've already arrived. Master, I don't yet understand. You'll understand as you live. When rain falls, hear the rain falling within you. When you drink water, know there are clouds in that water. When you work, know there is peace in your breath. When you're sad, don't resist. Watch the sadness like a cloud drifting across the sky. Arika fell silent. The words were simple yet strange, like water poured into a thirsty heart. From that day, Arika began to change. In the morning, instead of rushing to the fields, he stood still for a few breaths, feeling the dawn breeze touch his cheeks. When carrying a water gourd, he watched the ripples and remembered, within a single drop, there are clouds. He smiled to himself. Friends teased, "Hey, Arika, you've been daydreaming at the well. Careful you don't fall in." He answered gently, "I'm learning to see what I used to overlook." In the evening, he went to the levee to listen to the river. The water spoke in its own language, one without words, but enough to quiet a whole weary day. One night, with a crescent moon like a sickle, Arika met Sanghamitra again. He retold his old dream now, with a new part. The dewdrop flowed past villages, fields, and reed banks, hearing different calls, the call of gold and silver, of praise, of power, of romance. The dewdrop wanted to stop somewhere to ease its thirst, but whenever it stopped, it turned muddy and thick-heavy and unable to go far. "Master, am I greedy?" "Not just greedy. You're afraid too. Afraid you're not enough, so you grasp. But grasping makes you heavy, and heavy things sink. A dewdrop that wants to reach the sea must be light, because it lets go. Let go of everything, even love. Let go of clinging to forms, not love. True love is like water, no fixed shape, permeating everything." Arika pondered. Then softly, he asked, "Is it possible that I might never reach the sea?" Sanghamitra looked at him for a long time. "If you believe you're a separate dewdrop, you'll keep going and keep fearing. But if you see the sea is already within you, each step you take is already touching the sea. I am the sea already. You have never been apart from the sea." Those words fell into Arika's heart like the first drops of a monsoon. He bowed. But life wasn't just moonlit conversations. Mornings still meant roosters, field work, family demands, and market quarrels. There, Arika easily forgot his breath and remembered the calls of gold and reputation. A strange merchant came to the village, hawking glittering goods from afar. "Take this," he said, "and the girls will admire you. Take that, and your friends will respect you. Take this one, and people will give you a new title." Arika wavered. He struggled between two calls, the world's glittering call and a quiet call from deep within, the one he'd heard in the river's voice the night before. He ran to find Sanghamitra. "I feel like a dewdrop caught in a whirlwind. I want peace, but my eyes keep sticking to those shiny things. When your eyes stick, don't blame your eyes. Open another eye, the eye that knows you're stuck. Is knowing. Enough knowing at the right moment is enough to let go. You don't need to fight desire. Look at it and smile. A child stops crying when held. Your mind is the same. That night, Arika tried to hold his own desire with a small smile. Strangely, the inner waves calmed. He whispered, "I see you now, wave. Go on by. I won't clutch you anymore." A few days later, the village welcomed a group of mendicants. They walked by in silence, eyes bright. One stopped, pressed his palms together, and said to Arika peace to the young man learning the art of water. The art of water. Yes, water doesn't fight rock, yet wears rock down. Water doesn't flaunt a shape, yet is present in all shapes. Water doesn't ask directions, yet it always reaches the sea. The words flew into Arika's heart like a neat little verse. He turned to look for Sanghamitra, but the practitioner had been away for days. On the hermitage porch remained only a clay bowl and a green twig. Arika suddenly understood sometimes the teacher is silent, so the student can hear the teacher within. One afternoon, heavy rain fell. Water streamed off the thatch and pooled in the earthen yard. Arika traced a small channel with his hand to guide the water out of the puddle through a groove and into a ditch. He watched intently as the first drop left the muddy pool, slipped through the soil, and joined the flow. He exclaimed, as if discovering something simple yet wondrous, "No straining is needed. You only need to open a way." That night by lamplight, Arika wrote 2 words on a small wooden tablet, "Open way," and hung it by his bed. Each morning, he would murmur it like a prayer. "Today I will open a way for the water to pass through me." Even so, the great test had not yet come. Life, like a river, has calm stretches and rapids. Bad news struck, the crops failed. The river ran low. The well cracked. Villagers grew anxious, fighting over every bucket. The peace Arika had cultivated was suddenly swept away by a strong wind. In a scuffle at the well, someone shoved hard. The bucket shattered. Shouting erupted. Arika felt fire flare in his chest. A voice in his head yelled, "Push back, grab it. In this world, only the strong survive." Just then he saw a child, knocked down, knees bleeding from the jostling. He pulled the child up as if pulling back the part of himself that was flaring up. He took a deep breath, placed a hand over his heart, and felt it racing. Arika stepped back, yielded his place, and quietly left the crowd. He walked far to the levee and sat staring at the low water, sleeping in the bed of the dried river. If there's less water, he wondered, does the ocean become less? Suddenly, a deep, familiar voice sounded behind him. "The sea does not diminish, but your heart can close." Arika turned. Sanghamitra had returned, robe dusted from the road, eyes still warm. "Master, I'm angry. I'm afraid. I almost fought someone over a bucket of water." "You just saw yourself." "Good. Now open a way for the anger to pass through, just as you opened a way for the rainwater before." "I'm afraid of running dry, Master." "You fear scarcity because you think there's only this bucket." Non-self means knowing you are not the bucket. You are the current, and the current belongs to the sea. Arika sat still, hot tears falling onto his dusty hands. "I am the current. I belong to the sea." The words flowed through his heart like an underground spring rising in drought. "What will you do?" Arika Sanghamitra asked. "I will help the village dig channels connecting the small pools so that little water becomes much." "Good. When you connect, you learn the sea's teaching." That night, under a sky withholding rain, Arika marked out the first channels. He rallied the village youth, persuading, pleading, sometimes arguing, sometimes laughing. At first, people were skeptical. Then they were swept into the rhythm of shovels and the steady thud of hose. By morning, water from scattered puddles was already flowing to a common place. The hot, impatient eyes of yesterday softened. Arika suddenly remembered the teacher's words. When you connect, you learn the sea's teaching. He felt himself like a dewdrop finding the way to the ocean, not alone, but together with other drops. At the edge of the work, Sanghamitra watched Arika and smiled. Then he turned and walked down the dusty road, leaving the young man a lesson lived rather than memorized. By day's end, as the sun tilted, Arika washed his hands in the ditch and felt the cool water run through his fingers and move on. He whispered, "Go on, don't stay." To go is the most expansive way of staying. A breeze carried the scent of wet earth and new grass. Arika lifted his face, and the quiet emptiness in his heart seemed to open like a lake. He didn't know what to call the feeling, only that it was light, like a dewdrop shedding a heavy coat, leaving only a pure line of travel. The drought dragged on, then stopped abruptly with a short shower, like a half-kept promise. Water soaked into the dry soil, leaving a musty scent. Arika and the village youth kept digging channels linking the scattered pools. People began to see results. Vegetable beds turned green again. Fields cracked less. Market tempers cooled. One morning, Kavin, Arika's childhood friend, came carrying a red glittering sack and said in a low voice, "Listen, Arika, there's a trader from afar named Raghu who wants to set up a water collection station. They promise us a hanging garden in the desert in exchange for control over the channels. You started the channel project sign with them. You'll get the title of station manager and be paid handsomely." Arika frowned. Control over the channels, meaning they can shut off the water whenever they want. They call it regulation. There's a proper contract. If you don't sign, they'll go to the next village, and that village is ready and willing. In the afternoon, Raghu arrived. His robe was embroidered with gold thread, his voice sweet as honey. "Young Arika, I admire your talent. Open the way." What a worthy motto. Let's partner and turn those words into a brand, bringing benefit to countless people. Arika was silent. Part of him was glad to be recognized. Another part felt a chill. Was open the way something to sell? Was the flow of water something to be opened and closed by contract? Sensing his hesitation, Raghu smiled. "I don't take from anyone. I manage. Without me, who ensures a steady flow, all you need is a signature. Gold will come, fame will come, and gossip will fall silent." That night, Arika went to the channel. The moon was thin as a thread. He touched the water and felt it pass through his fingers and move on. "Go on, don't stay." The whisper from the night before returned. The next morning, before Raghu and the villagers, Arika said, "The water isn't mine. It isn't yours either. It belongs to the current, to the whole. I will not sign." The air froze. Raghu gave a thin smile. "Young people, always dreamers." "Fine, I'll go to the next village." Kavin tugged at Arika's sleeve. "You're a fool. We just lost our chance." Arika stayed quiet. He didn't argue. He knew the wind of talk and blame would come. And it did. Some called him the one who blocks progress. The rice stall owner glared. "That opened the way line. Sounds nice, but can it fill our stomachs?" Arika only bowed, smiled, and kept digging channels and patching banks. A few weeks later came bad news from the neighboring village. Raghu's water station had dammed too early. The water swelled and washed away the side of a house. People shouted, but the contract allowed for trial regulation. Raghu slipped away in the night. Villagers from next door came to Arika to learn how to open the way with small grooves without blocking the flow. An old man came and took Arika's hand. "Son, since you linked the channels, this old back hurts less. You're no saint, but you let the water go." Arika bowed. "I only learn from the water, sir." Another day, a girl named Mira stopped by the channel, hair damp with sweat, arms full of greens. "Arika, my mother is sick. I'm angry at poverty, at the drought, at fate. Angry at..." "This whole life," Arika gently asked, "could you set the bundle down for a moment?" "What for?" "So it's lighter to breathe. Then we'll figure things out." Mira put the vegetables down, her shoulders lowered by half an inch. Arika had her sit by the water's edge. "Do you hear the sound of the water?" "I do. That sound doesn't argue with the rocks. It slips past. Each time fire rises inside, you try setting something down, like you just set down the bundle. It's not abandoning your mother or your responsibilities. It's just setting the anger down for a moment so you can breathe." Mira laughed through tears. "Setting anger down like setting down a bundle. Sounds easy, but it's hard. It's hard when you don't see you're holding it. It's easy when you do." Mira looked at the water's surface and nodded. The next day she returned and said softly, "Last night I set it down a few times. Nothing magical, but I yelled at my child less." Arika smiled. "That's magical enough." News that Sanghamitra had returned spread through the village like a cool breeze. He sat on the porch steps watching Arika, work eyes both approving and inquisitive. At night, teacher and student went to the channel. "You didn't sign with Raghu," Sanghamitra said, "because you heard the voice of the current more than the voice of gold." "Good. I still get angry, still afraid, still want people's approval, master." "Yes. Knowing that is like placing a lamp in the middle of the house. Once the light is on, the mice no longer have the run of the place. But the mice still run. Then just notice them running. Don't smash the lamp with a hammer." They both laughed. The wind blew, the water chuckled at their feet. "Master, one thing still troubles me. Does non-self mean losing myself?" "No. Non-self means seeing clearly that what you call yourself arises from conditions: breath, rice sunlight, a mother's kindness, a friend's helping hand, the village's channel water. Seeing that the self opens and widens. When it widens, you fear less and cling less. You let go, not out of disdain, but out of trust in the current. Trust in the current means trusting I'm not apart from the sea." "Yes." Arika looked up at the sky. The moon wasn't clear that night, but stars were scattered like salt. He suddenly felt his heart grow light, as if a knot had just loosened. Harvest came late. There wasn't much rice, but it was enough. The village held a small festival, hung lanterns, and children ran about in delight. Near midnight, Kavin staggered over to Arika, drunk. "You won. Everyone praises. Open the way." "And me? I lost. I wanted quick wealth, wanted respect. Now I'm neck-deep in debt." Arika helped him sit. "I didn't win over anyone. I was just lucky enough to hear the channel's voice." "Don't preach. You don't get it. My family's about to lose our fields." Arika stayed silent and let Kavin cry. After a while, he said, "Tomorrow we'll get you work with the channel crew. Work a little, get paid a little. Work more, get paid more. No titles, no shame. Working is walking." Kavin snorted. "I'm used to doing big things now. You want me shoveling dirt? It stings." Water begins as drops. A small drop is still water. Kavin stared at Arika for a long time, then sighed. "Fine. I'll try being a drop." The next day, Kavin showed up at the channel site. Arika handed him a hoe and said nothing more. By noon, sweat had sobered Kevin up. He stuck the hoe in the ground, panting, "I hate my old life. But this new one is hard." Arika laughed. "It's hard because your heart still wants to reach the sea fast. Keep digging. Walking is arriving." Another thunderclap of trouble came after a heavy upstream rain rocks and soil blocked the headwater stream. The channels began to run dry. Panic swept the village. This time, all eyes turned to Arika. "You open the way." Arika climbed to the headwaters with a team of young men. The slope was steep rocks, jagged fallen trees blocking the path. At the site, a landslide had sealed the spring. Everyone wanted to dig straight through. Arika raised a hand. "Digging straight will cause more collapse. We'll cut a side channel around the bank to lead the water first, then slowly lower the earthen wall." Someone snapped. "All that winding around wastes energy." Arika pointed to the trickle of muddy flow. "Water always chooses the lowest path. Don't force it to climb." They split into teams. Kevin dug steadily, his back drenched with sweat. A few hours later, a thread of green water, bright as a child's eyes poked through, quivered, then rushed out. Everyone cheered. Arika plopped down and laughed giddy as a child watching a kite catch the wind. On the way back, Kevin punched Arika lightly on the shoulder. "Cut a side channel around the bank. Sounds like a philosophy of life. Yeah, often don't argue with the rock. Slip past first." That night, Arika dreamed he was a dewdrop again. This time, the drop wasn't afraid of getting lost. It passed through tiny crevices, met countless other drops, laughing and slipping along together. Sometimes it was pulled into a whirl, but the sea's whisper kept sounding, "Keep going. I am here." He woke and sat up in the dark. Pressing his palms together, he closed his eyes and breathed deeply. A gratitude without a specific target welled up. Gratitude for rain, for sun, for rocks that taught him to slip past, for a drunken friend who taught him to start from a drop, for scolding that taught him to set things down, for Sangamitra, and for the days the teacher was absent, teaching him to listen within. In the morning, he mounted a new sign at the head of the channel. "Water goes, we open the way." Passers-by smiled. Children sounded out the words with sing-song voices. Mira stopped by with news that her mother was better. "Last night I set the bundle down again to breathe. Then I even set my fear down for a while. My mother said she'd never seen me look at her so gently." Arika pressed his palms together. "When we set things down, our hands are free to hold." Mira blushed and laughed. Water's words, they're so sweet. Word spread that a group of mendicants was passing through the region. Their leader stopped at the village edge and gave a short talk on the four currents: greed, anger, delusion, and becoming the habit of wanting to be something. Arika started in surprise. "Becoming all this time I've wanted to be the one who opens the way." That title might be a dam too. That evening, Arika went to find Sangamitra Master. "I fear a new dam is rising in my heart. I am the one who opens the way." Sangamitra nodded. "Names are born to fall. You see it good. Let it fall like a leaf. How do I let it fall? Do the work that needs doing and forget the doer." When people praise, Arika opens the way. Quietly remind yourself, "Water taught me." When people criticize, remind yourself, "Rock taught me." Little by little, the eye will grow thinner. Arika bowed. "I understand. Non-self isn't losing. It's thinning so we can widen." Yes, when you widen, you flow more easily. At the end of that year's 5th month, the rains truly returned. The river swelled, the channels sang. The village set out simple feasts. People poured cool water for each other, as though pouring good news. Kevin lifted a bowl and grew solemn. Let me say this. Arika, thank you for not signing that contract. Otherwise, who knows, this bowl of water might have had a price. Everyone laughed. Arika pointed to the bowl. Thank the water. That night, Arika and Sangamitra stood by the rising river. The full moon shattered into 1,000 pieces on the surface. Master, sometimes I think I've understood everything. Then one sentence from someone can muddy me. I'm still weak. Water isn't clear because it clears itself, but because it isn't stirred. When it's stirred, wait. Don't skim the sediment. Don't blame the sediment. Let it settle. Arika looked at the dark current glinting with moonlight and smiled. Let it settle. I'll remember. Remember to live it, not to tell it. Arika burst out laughing. Yes, the night breeze carried the damp scent of reeds. A log floated by. Children's lanterns set upon the channels flickered like fireflies. Arika clearly heard the call of something beyond the river, the ocean. But that call no longer made him restless. It felt like a lullaby. You've been traveling with me from the start. Just go, don't cling. The season turned violently. In the first days, the wind howled, clouds gathered black as coal and willow leaves bowed their faces. That night, thunder cracked, as if tearing the roof of the sky, and then the rain came down, not a sprinkle, but a beating. Water poured like 1,000 jars. Village roads turned into streams, channels, into small rivers, and the river into a swath of churning black fields. Arika rushed to the channel bank, shouting over the wind. Kevin, block the east branch for now. Route the water through the fallow fields. Don't let it crash into the market. Kevin yelled back. What fallow fields? Only your family's fields are left. If we cut through there, your house and granary will be gone. Arika's heartbeat seemed to drop out for a moment. That house and granary were generations of savings. His father's keepsake, the place where the wooden plaque, "Open the Way," was hung. Wind whipped water into his face, stinging with salt. From the roar, Arika heard Sangamitra's voice. He didn't know if it was real or just the wind. You belong to the sea, not to the granary. Mira ran up, hair plastered wet. The market's about to flood. Elderly people and children are crowding onto the high knoll. Do something, Arika. Another torrent came down, as if a whole mountain range had been dumped. Arika squinted at the brown swirling water, where a black belly of water was bulging at the channel head. If that belly burst toward the market, it would wipe everything out. If he opened the way and cut across Arika's house, bank would become the outlet. He bit his lip until it bled. Then he took a deep breath as if diving down into himself. Cut here. Kevin's eyes bulged. Are you crazy? No. Water goes, we open the way. Do it. As soon as he gave the order, Arika grabbed a crowbar and threw himself at the bank around his own granary. The iron bit into the soaked earth. The collapsing bank groaned like the breaking of a memory. The water saw a path, roared, and slipped through like a herd of buffalo, bursting from a pen. Children on the high knoll screamed in fear. Then cheers rose when they saw the belly of water change direction. Mira grabbed Arika's arm, careful, it's collapsing. The earth was soft as dough. A section slid. Arika fell toward the water's edge. Kevin lunged and caught his wrist. In a split second, Arika saw his own roof, the house of new rice dinners, friends' laughter, the little wooden sign being caressed by the muddy water. And he also saw the whole market, the old mothers, the children, and Mira's rain-wet eyes. A wrenching tore through him. Then he let go of the house inside his mind and held tight to his friend's hand to pull himself up onto the bank. The water had a way out now. It thundered across Arika's fields, tore through straw embankments, swept through the yard, and swallowed the granary whole. A cat yowled, swept up by the current. Kevin sprang after it, scooped the animal to his chest, and tumbled back to shore, both of them collapsing in gasping sobs and laughter. Another scream pierced the air from the landing. The upstream dam had collapsed. A wall of water upright like a black cliff barreled down. What they'd just opened was only enough for the first wave. This new wall was a wild beast. Arika looked around, trying to map the terrain in his head. The high knoll, the soapberry grove, an old abandoned channel, a stone revetment not yet connected. Only one place still offered a small advantage, the rock cleft at the head of the hamlet. If they could pop out the old wooden slab wedged across that cleft, the whole mass of water could divert toward the lower fields, cutting the direct force on the village in half. To the rock cleft, Arika shouted. They ran. Rain lashed their faces. Thunder pounded like hammers on their shoulders. When they arrived, the old wooden slab had swelled from soaking and was jammed tight between two stone grains. Kevin, Mira, and a few young men grabbed on, pulling until fingernails bent back, but it wouldn't budge. The first surge from the broken dam was on them, roaring like a herd of mad buffalo. The earthen bank shook. A figure in an earth-colored robe appeared, Sanghamitra. He said nothing, only looked at Arika, then at the slab. That gaze seemed to hand over a decision that words hadn't yet named. Arika nodded. They understood without speaking. He took a breath and dove into the runnel, groping under the slab, feeling for the old pin. The bamboo wedge was rotten, turned to mud. He closed his eyes, pried with his knife, braced the pin with his other hand, and pushed with his shoulder. Water hammered his ears like 1,000 hisses. His lungs burned. Mira cried out, "Arika!" Come up for air. He surfaced, gulped a breath of wind, then dove again. The pin gave. The slab shuddered. Kevin and the crew on shore heaved in unison. A dry crack, then the slab popped free, and the black runnel gaped open. The oncoming wall caught just enough of an angle to turn. It plunged into the channel throat like a beast, led aside at the last second, spraying white mist. The high knoll by the market was spared half the blow. People clutched each other, shouting and crying, not knowing which voices were their own. Arika had barely surfaced. He hadn't even smiled yet when he saw Sanghamitra standing midstream. A large log in the second surge was spearing toward him like a lance. Without thinking, Arika lunged, but Sanghamitra, as if he knew beforehand, only waved him back, then tilted his body slightly, borrowing the water's force to slip aside. The log skimmed past his robe by a hand's breadth, tearing its edge. He spun, snatched a child who'd slipped at the bank, and tossed the boy into Mira's arms. The third surge crashed in and dragged him under. Master Arika screamed, diving after him. Sanghamitra surfaced just as a whirl pulled him under again. Arika tore through the current, but between them, only 2 arm lengths, lay a rotten bamboo, a small whirl, and a patch of water choked with debris, like a nameless trial. On the far side, Sanghamitra looked at Arika, his eyes strangely peaceful, in the rain, and shook his head slightly. Don't. In a paper-thin instant, Arika understood if he dove into the vortex, both of them would be trapped. and the newly opened diversion would clog. Right behind him, dozens were clinging to that cleft, the way they clung to their last breath. A voice inside him, ripping him apart, shouted, "Save the master." Another voice, low from someplace older, almost the voice of the water, whispered, "Save the current." He clenched his teeth, spun around, and raced back to where the slab had been wedged a stone at one corner, and drove in more bamboo stakes to reinforce the runnel so the fourth surge wouldn't seal it. Kevin and Mira understood and jumped in to help. Sweat, rain, and tears mixed together. When they finally looked up, Sanghamitra's earth-colored robe was far downstream, bobbing in a forest of white foam. That night, the flood receded. The village wasn't safe yet, but it had passed the knife's edge. On the high knoll, people lit fires. Children fell asleep in their mother's arms. The market was soaked, but it still stood. The channel bank flickered with firelight, like a row of fallen stars on the water. Arika staggered back toward his home, which was no longer a home. The granary was smashed, the thatch walls collapsed, and the "Open the Way" plaque had floated off and gotten wedged under a banana tree. He picked it up, wiped the mud off, and held it to his chest, like a child. Kevin came over wanting to say something, sorry, thank you, or condolences, but his throat closed. He could only lay a hand on Arika's shoulder. Mira brought a bowl of hot porridge, her hands shaking from the cold. "Eat. Then we still have to go find the master." Arika cupped the bowl. The heat stung his face. Only then did he feel tired. His whole body felt hollow, like a bamboo tray left out in the sun. He didn't cry. His tears seemed spent, along with the flood. Near midnight, the wind had stopped its shrieking. Only the drip of water remained from ragged thatch roofs. Arika sat beneath a soapberry tree, the "Open the Way" plaque beside him. He closed his eyes and breathed. In the night after the storm, silence emerged, a silence with no sound, but full of the cool scent of earth that had just drunk water, and a numb emptiness of fresh loss. From somewhere in that emptiness, the master's voice fell straight into his heart, like a raindrop. "You are not apart from the sea." He opened his eyes. His chest ached as if a shard of pottery had washed inside. But within that shard was a tiny warmth, flickering like a firefly. He pressed a hand to his chest and whispered, "I am not apart from the sea." At first light, with fog thick as smoke, Arika, Kevin, Mira, and a few men went along the riverbanks with torches searching for signs of Sanghamitra. They asked at each fishing hut, each watch post, each reed bank. At the fourth bend, they found only a clay bowl lying on the silt bar unbroken, as if the sea had returned one thing and kept the person. Arika knelt and lifted the bowl with both hands. Suddenly, he felt as if he were lifting his own heart, plain and fragile, and yet strangely not broken. Kevin bowed his head. Mira bit her lip, and at last, her tears consented to fall. The flood had passed, but the flood within was just beginning. The title, "The One Who Opens the Way," meant nothing in that moment. Before Arika lay a different road to go on, without clinging to rebuild, without attachment to search for the master, perhaps to search within the master's very absence. When the first sun after the storm edged up, drawing a thin gold streak along the torn clouds, Arika stood. He turned toward the village. The market needed cleaning channels, needed clearing people, needed comforting. He turned toward the riverbanks, needed reinforcing. The diversion needed strengthening. Between those two directions ran a fine line with a name, letting go of attachment to do the work of the current. Arika took the clay bowl with him. He understood that a new stretch of life had just opened, a stretch of resolution where he had to turn loss into flow. Turn the teaching not apart from the sea into daily footsteps, and learn to love both what remains and what is gone, the way water loves every shape of vessel. But for now, right now, he did just one thing: breathe. One long, deep breath, smelling of earth after rain. And at the end of that breath, he felt as if he had just touched the hem of the ocean's robe. The morning after the storm, the first cooking smoke drifted lazily into the air. Makeshift thatch roofs were propped up with bamboo poles. The market was wet, but a big pot of porridge was already on. Arika hefted a hoe, the clay bowl of Sangamitra slung across his back with a rough cloth strap. Each time he paused from work, he touched the bowl lightly, as if touching an invisible warm pulse. Divide up the tasks, Arika Kevin called his voice hoarse, from lack of sleep. Standing on the channel bank, Arika spoke crisply. Group 1. Clear mud in the market open auxiliary drains. Prioritize routes for the elderly and children. Group 2. Reinforce the diversion cleft with stone and bamboo gabions. Plant vetiver grass on the slopes so future water slides instead of punches. Group 3. Install bamboo flood bells along the banks, one every 100 paces, linked by rattan. When the water rises, the bells will ring on their own. Group 4. Set up a communal kitchen. Take cooking shifts. No questions about whose house. If you're hungry, eat. If you're free, ladle. Mira quickly jotted everything on a wet plank and smiled. Orders from the current. Hose thumped. Stones clicked together. By noon, the mud underfoot cooled from sticky to soothing. Children lined up to tie the bells, chanting, "Water goes, we open the way." One asked Uncle Arika, why not write, "Arika opens the way"? Arika ruffled his hair, "Because water taught me. I just follow." At dusk, Arika, Mira, and Kavin went to burn incense at the rock cleft, where Sanghamitra had been swept away. There was no body, only a blade of grass caught in a crack and a torn strip of earth-colored cloth. Mira prayed softly, "Master, if you've returned to the sea, please teach us to love both what remains and what is gone." The wind brushed a nearby bamboo bell ting. Arika suddenly understood the master's absence was also a kind of presence, like the silence that makes a bell a bell. On the way back, Kevin grumbled, "I still can't get used to people praising you. Something keeps rubbing inside me." "Yeah," Arika said, "I hear that rubbing inside me too. Each time I hear it, I gently remind myself, don't build a dam out of fame. How do you lower that dam? By taking on a task I don't need my name on. Let others take the credit. When my itchy hand wants to raise itself, I stick it in the mud and work." All three laughed, the sound tinged with the smell of mud and the scent of fresh wind. A few days later, a district headman arrived with a guard detail, drums and gongs in hand, and announced they'd supply materials if the village agreed to name the project Valiant Dyke. The headman spoke with a curled lip. With a name, a plaque, and a procession, the current will be strengthened by honor, the crowd murmured. Kevin glanced at Arika. "If you refuse, they'll call you arrogant. If you accept, the channel becomes someone else's." Arika bowed. "Sir, please record your support in the stone and brick of the dike. As for the nameplate, carve, 'Going to the sea.' Because water only needs a path, not a surname." The headman frowned. "You have a difficult way of speaking." Arika stayed calm. more difficult than the sound of bamboo bells ringing when the flood hits. The villagers burst out laughing. The headman, unwilling to be seen as blocking post-storm aid, let it go. As he left, he muttered sourly, "The current doesn't remember gratitude," Mira answered gently. "Those who travel in the current will remember who helped them move." That evening, Arika gathered the village around the communal kitchen. He spoke little, mostly asked, "What is the market still lacking? Which roofs should be patched first? Whose seed rice was lost? How do we share so we won't be short next season?" An old woman, hands trembling, held out a bundle of dried seed rice. "My house has this bag kept high and spared by the flood. I'd like to contribute it to the seed fund." Arika took it, set the bundle on a bamboo table in the courtyard, and bowed. "A common fund belonging to no one. Next season we'll sow by the water's calendar sow, where the earth has had just enough to drink." "What's the water's calendar?" someone asked. "It's a non-self calendar sow, when the soil is ready, not out of pride or face. Low-ground sows, later high-ground sows, earlier. Strong folks help the weak. Those skilled in banks help those skilled in seed. Not out of pity, but because that's what the current needs. A sense spread like fine foam." Arika set up a water school right by the channel. Earthen walls, thatch, roof, bamboo slate. Children learned 3 things. 1. Water takes the low path. People take the soft path. 2. Don't argue with rock, learn to slip through. 3. Set down to embrace, let go of clinging, so your hands are free to love. At the start of each class, Arika scooped a bowl of water from the channel and set it on the table. "Today, I won't teach. The water will. Look, water doesn't fight for the high place. It doesn't cling to a shape, it soaks into thirsty earth. When you grow up, you might be a craftsman, a farmer, a healer, but don't forget to be like water." A little boy raised his hand. "How do I be like water?" When you see a friend crying, sit lower to listen. When you see someone hot with anger, slip past. Don't butt heads. When you see a household that's parched, soak in with the smallest act. Round eyes shone under the thatched roof. Late at night when everyone slept, Arika sat alone by the river. The clay bowl lay on his lap. He lit a mustard seed lamp, its flame as small as a breath. "Master," he whispered, "I set the house down. But there's something harder to set down. Longing." The wind touched the lamp. It trembled but didn't go out. In the trembling, he heard his teacher's voice like a dewdrop resting on a leaf. "Setting down isn't throwing away. Set it down so your hands are free to hold. Hold the current." He smiled in the dark. For the first time, longing cut less sharply. One noon, a messenger reported someone swept away upstream had survived caught in the roots of a great tree. Arika froze, heart pounding like a drum. He went at once, but the person wasn't Sanghamitra. It was Raghu, the trader from last year's water collection station. He was pale, shoulder dislocated, eyes empty. I was wrong," Raghu said, his voice cracked. "I thought I could control the current. I didn't know. Water teaches with floods." Arika bandaged him and offered a bowl of porridge. Raghu looked at the bamboo bells at the channel slipping along the new stone revetment. "Who made these?" "The current did. We only learned." Raghu gave a rough laugh, and tears came unexpectedly. "Let me stay a season. I want to learn how to open the way." Arika nodded. No one spoke of past wrongs. Water keeps no grudges. It just goes. The next season, the new channel spread into a network. Banks were planted with grass, the dike had spillways, bamboo bells hung sparse but sure. The water school taught adults in the cool of evening. Eureka laid out soft rules, no dam higher than the knee, no leader title, just a flow steward rotating weekly. The ledger was a flowboard recording where it clogged, where it muddied, where it held strong. A man who'd once shouted at the well came to bow his head. "Please accept my apology. On the storm day I shoved you. The water shoved harder than you did." Eureka laughed. "We've already set it down." The man's face softened like earth after rain. One night the whole village held a lantern ceremony to remember what had gone to the sea. Each lantern bore a name, a person's name, a house's name, an ox's name, a memory's name. Eureka lit a nameless lantern, set the clay bowl in the courtyard, and said, "Tonight we offer absence not to ask for it back, but to remember that nothing truly departs. A drop leaves our sight only to dissolve into a shoreless place. If anyone carries something they haven't set down, please place it here." Mira set down her fear of losing her mother. Kevin set down his drunken pride. The old woman set down her anxious sack of rice. The bamboo bells by the bank rang softly in agreement. Lanterns left their hands and swam into the current, each little light becoming a small star. Eureka stood still for a long time. When the lanterns were gone, he turned back, his voice low. "Tomorrow we begin the infiltration cistern at the head of the village. Rainwater goes into the tank, seeps into the aquifer, and in drought, we'll have a common well. We'll dig a moisture garden behind the market, and we'll rebuild houses, but lighthouses, so if need be, water can pass through and our hearts won't break." "What's a lighthouse?" Kevin asked. "A home with fewer things and more space. More bamboo than brick. More loving each other than owning each other." "Put letting ahead of holding." People murmured. Some worried, some were glad. But like water, the village tried. At season's end, Eureka stood gazing at the common well filling green at the infiltration tank. A little girl scooped water, saw her face and squealed, "I can see me in the water." Eureka bent down and touched the surface lightly, "And the water is in you." Mira came over and handed Eureka a new wooden plaque, "Not apart from the sea." "Where should we hang it?" she asked. Eureka thought for a moment, then smiled. "Inside. Each of us will hang it in our own chest." They stood quietly watching the channel curve into the river glinting with evening light, like streaks of silver. Far off, there seemed to be a deep, low call from nowhere in particular, the voice of the ocean. But now it was no longer the call of lack. It was a breath. Eureka laid a hand on the clay bowl, closed his eyes, and whispered, "I understand more now, Master. Letting go isn't abandoning. Non-self isn't losing. Let go so the hands are free to hold. Non-self so the heart is wide enough to flow. I will keep opening the way, not in my name, but in the currents." Wind passed through the grasses. A bamboo bell sang a long, clear ting. Season followed season. The scars of the flood became green veins, grass on the channel banks, the communal kitchen turning into a festival yard, bamboo bells chiming like morning birds. Villagers grew used to lighthouses, fewer possessions, more open space ready to make way for water if the current needed to pass. Lighthouses made hearts light too. People argued less and smiled more easily. Eureka no longer had the hurried steps of the old days. He rose early, kindled a small brazier, and set the clay bowl on the shelf. Some mornings he didn't light a lamp. He left it empty to remember that some forms of presence are silence. Then he walked the flowboard once, marking where it muddied, circling where it clogged, scoring where it was sound. The week's flow steward was a young mother. Erika stood behind her, quietly lending a hand, leaving decisions to her. His name faded from every list like water. He stepped back so the current could widen. One afternoon, Raghu, the man who once built dams, came to the water school and bowed before the children. Holding a bowl of water, his voice was husky but gentle. "The flood taught me what gold never did. Flowing beats blocking. Today I ask to serve as flow steward for a week." The children clapped. Erika watched, a faint smile on his lips. No one recited old debts. Water doesn't hold grudges, it only soaks in. That evening, Mira brought a bundle of herbs to the porch. "My mother's getting better. I'm still afraid, but I know how to set it down so I can breathe." "What did you set down?" Erika asked. "The thought, I must save my mother. I just do the current's work. Brew medicine, wipe her down. Tell stories. The rest I hand over to the sea." Erika nodded. Letting go isn't abandoning. It's returning what isn't ours to a wider current. A year after the flood, the village held the Going to the Sea festival. No pounding drums, no noisy procession. People simply held hands and walked slowly along the channel. Each person carried a name to set down old grudge, fear of poverty, injured pride, needing praise, wanting to be a hero. Erika carried a small tag that read, "I am the one who opens the way." At the rock cleft, everyone sat in a circle. A bamboo bell chimed softly. Erika stood. Each name is a dam. Some dams hold water. Some dams hold me. Tonight we open the dams we don't need so the current can go. He dropped his tag into the flow. It spun once and drifted away. The one who opens the way slipped off his shoulders like a shirt gone too tight. Beside him, Kavin let go of quiet arrogance, Raghu let go of crush others to win, and Mira let go of fear of losing my mother. Those words passed through the firelight, then shrank, blurred, and disappeared into the night. After the ritual, a little girl tugged Erika's sleeve. "If you set everything down, who are you?" Erika knelt to meet her eyes. "I'm the water in the bowl, the breath in the chest, the footsteps on the path. When I'm not someone special, I belong to everyone." The girl smiled. "I only understand a little, but I feel lighter." In daily work, the lessons of letting go and non-self became small gestures. In the market, sellers press prices less hard, remembering don't build a dam on someone else's heart. In the fields, the strong took a few extra furrows for the elderly, knowing, if I flow faster, I help the flow. In arguments, people slipped the topic rather than stabbing pride head-on. The bamboo bells by the channel became bells inside the mind ting. Don't stir. Let it settle. One day, a new caravan of merchants arrived, pitching a high-profit deal. The village invited them to a meal, listened to everything, then didn't sign. Not out of fear, but out of enough. When you are enough, you can let go of many shiny invitations. At the water school, Erika told of 3 bridges. 1. Breath bridge. When the mind is hot, cross it with 3 long breaths. Then speak. 2. Seeing bridge. See what you're gripping. Once you truly see it, your hand loosens on its own. 3. Sharing bridge. Hand some of my tasks to ours. A current stays strong when it has many branches. The children wrote this on bamboo and hung it in the communal kitchen. Adults came to read and smiled as if meeting an old friend again. One foggy morning, Erika said to Kavin, "Let's go meet the sea." They walked along the river. The reed banks opened onto swaths of silvery waves. The river widened bit by bit with no clear border, like the earth letting out a long breath. By afternoon, the water changed color, and a salty tang touched the tongue. The sea was there, no flags, no signboards, no welcome gate. Only a vastness that makes those who arrive fall silent. Arika set the clay bowl on a rock. He filled it with seawater, lifted it to his brow, and softly said, "Master, I've brought the bowl back to the source. I'm not keeping it, and I'm not returning it. I'm simply recognizing." Kevin stood beside him, squinting in the sun. How does it feel? Like realizing the water in my own eyes is salty too. They sat a long time watching the tide come in. When the waves rose, the bowl was submerged, and the water inside and outside became one. Arika neither released the bowl nor took it back. He left it there. If it drifted, let it drift. If it stayed, let it stay. Letting go is like that, neither throwing away nor clinging. On the way home, Kevin asked, "Do you miss the master?" "I do. But now the missing is soft like a grassy bank. It lets the current pass through. At harvest that year, the rice was just enough, not surplus, not short. People said enough is a liberating word. When it's enough, you don't clutch. When you don't clutch, you don't fear." On the full moon night, Arika stood in the courtyard, looking at the moon propped on the tip of the bamboo. He called the kids over. "Tell me, what does letting go look like in our village?" A little boy said, "It's putting the hoe down when you get hot-headed, drinking some water, then hoeing again." A little girl said, "It's not hugging all the work to yourself, asking a friend to help." A mother said it's dropping one needless retort to keep a peaceful family meal. Arika smiled and turned to the adults. "And what does non-self look like?" An elder replied, "It's the same whoever's on flow duty. The village doesn't need a hero. The village needs the current." Everyone applauded. The bamboo bells gave a light ting, as if in praise. That night, Arika returned to the porch and placed his hand on the clay bowl. He spoke softly, as if to the rain. "I see it now. Letting go is giving back to the current what I mistakenly clutched: status things, people memories. Letting go doesn't make me lack. It makes me light enough to love. Non-self doesn't mean losing myself. It means opening myself so the breath of all can breathe in me, the pain of all can flow through me, and the joy of all can bloom in me." He sat still, listening to his heartbeat. Each beat was like a tiny wave touching the shore of his chest, dissolving, then continuing. The next morning, the bamboo board at the water school bore 3 new plain lines. Letting go doesn't mean loss. It's removing the shackles from your hands so your hands are free to hold. Non-self doesn't mean emptiness. It's widening so we belong to one another. Life doesn't mean waiting for peace before living. It's living in the current, opening a way through each small task. Villagers passing by read them quietly, like a daily life sutra. One late afternoon, Arika stood at the head of the channel, where the water goes out to the river. Mira brought a basket of leaf-wrapped cakes. Kevin carried a bundle of new bamboo on his shoulder. The kids ran ahead, begging to hang more bells. Far off, kites climbed high, pulling adults' eyes away from tomorrow's worries. Arika pressed his palms together and bowed very slightly toward the flow. "Thank you for teaching me how to be in the ocean, even when I'm only a drop." Wind threaded through the grass bank. A bamboo bell rang out, long and clear, thin as a strand of light. Someone whispered, "Listen, the sea is speaking." Someone else smiled. "No, it's our own heart speaking." The story pauses there, not with an exclamation point, but with a rest. Because from now on, every meal, every stroke of the hoe, every time you set something down and smile, is the next sentence of the drop in the ocean. When work is piled high, don't fling your hands to the sky and lament like you're swimming in a storm. Stop for a single breath, just one, to inventory what your hands are holding. Some tasks must be done now. Some can wait. Some should be handed off. Set down one thing you can set down, like taking a rock out of the backpack that's tugging your shoulders down. When your hands are free, you can hold what matters. The necessary call, the real deadline, the person who needs you most. You'll be surprised a single decision to set down quiets. The brain steadies the heartbeat and makes the path suddenly clearer. Like water slipping through a crack in the stone. No shouting, no fighting, just choosing the lower way, the easy way, the way that goes. When your pride stings, don't rush to fire back. That sting is only a thorn signaling I've bumped into the wall called self. Inhale deeply and remind yourself non-self doesn't make you less. It opens you up. Open to hear the other side's story, to see why they spoke that way, to notice you, too, have been clumsy before. Learn from water how to slip past rock, not because water is weak, but because it's wise. It keeps its warmth, its direction, its nature. 1. I see your point. One beat of give me a moment to think often suffices for the wave of wounded ego to foam out at the shore. After that, you'll say what needs saying, but in a clearer tone and thus more effectively. When facing the choice to grip or let go, ask yourself, does this help the flow or build a dam in my heart? Gripping is sometimes needed, holding a child's hand to cross the street, holding to an ethical promise, holding to the truth. But many times what we grip is dead weight, fear of falling behind, the craving for praise, the habit of control. Choose what advances the current that is. Choose what makes you lighter, helps the group move, and opens the future. You'll see the well-timed release is never quitting. It's water's strategy, leaving a tight bend to meet a larger river. From a single drop, we learn how to move in the ocean, quiet, unshowy, yet steady, soft, enduring. Steady in taking one small step each day in the right direction. Soft in changing shape to keep the essence. Enduring in arriving even if slowly. Peace then stops being prey to chase. Peace becomes the way we walk. It's present when we tidy the desk and the calendar, when we close our mouth at the right time and open our heart in the right place, when we set down an unnecessary title to make way for the work that needs doing. Peace is also water in a bowl, simple, clear, without adornment. Over a long day, the bowl may cloud from bumps. Don't stir it more. Set the bowl down, leave it be, let the sediment settle. A quiet evening, a slow walk, a page and a notebook to write out the tangle. These are how the water clears again. And peace is the bamboo bell's soft ting whenever the heart remembers to come home, to the breath, rising and falling, to the hands, touching something wholesome, to the eyes of a loved one needing a smile. Practice is very simple. Morning, choose one thing to set down, a chatty group thread, a non-priority task so your hands are free. Noon, when someone pokes your pride, slip past it with 3 breaths, then reply. Night, write one short line. Where did I choose the flow today? Tomorrow, repeat. Like a patient, drop, seeking the river. In this way, quietly, without fanfare, you'll find an ocean opening right inside your own chest, where peace requires no conditions. It only asks that you remember to set down, so you can hold, open so you can settle, and flow so you can arrive. As we close these 4 Zen stories, the beggar and the precious jewel, the shadow and the person, the finger, pointing at the moon and the drop and the ocean, we see a single red thread throughout the path of returning. Returning to the innate Buddha nature, the jewel in the heart, looking straight at delusions and fear. The shadow letting go of means to touch the truth, the finger in the moon, and dissolving into the interbeing of all things, the drop and the ocean. This is also the essence of the 4 Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, recognizing suffering, seeing its causes, opening a way of practice through right mindfulness, right view, compassion, and wisdom. 1. The beggar and the precious jewel reminds us we are not as lacking as we think. When we chase the outside less, we realize the jewel is our luminous nature. This is the voice of right view. Seeing the true nature reduces suffering. 2. The shadow in the person teaches us to stop and look straight at fear. Ignorance grows only when we run. Wisdom rises when we abide and see the shadow is only a shadow. That is mindfulness and concentration in practice. 3. The finger, pointing at the moon, warns, don't worship form. Rituals, symbols, words, all are only to lead to direct experience. This is the middle way, using skillful means without getting stuck in them. 4. The drop in the ocean opens the depth of dependent origination. Nothing stands alone. When we understand we belong to the flow, non-self doesn't make us lose ourselves. It opens us to love and serve steadily, like water soft, yet overcoming the hard. These 4 pieces fit into a living map for us, whether at work, under family pressures, or in the noisy street. Let go so your hands are free to hold what matters. See clearly so you no longer fear what isn't real. Experience directly instead of merely collecting concepts. Join in rather than fighting alone. Walk like this, and peace is no longer something to chase. Peace is the way we step light awake and full of loving kindness. If these stories touched you, we invite you to keep walking with us, so seeds of mindfulness keep sprouting. Please subscribe to the Buddhism Seeds channel. Hit like and share with loved ones. Who knows, a small story might become a waterway that opens a path for someone. And don't forget to comment, which of the 4 stories made you reflect? Which topic would you like us to explore more deeply? Letting go, non-self mindfulness, compassion. In the next video, thank you for listening. See you again as we keep planting seeds of awakening right in the middle of everyday life.